Chapter 1264. Ah ha 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 ha. Just kidding, just kidding. Renziling laughed and didn't seem to be embarrassed. Seeing that Song Ing couldn't hold it in any longer, she covered her mouth with her little hand and said with a smirk, "But I was really shocked at first. I thought that for such a big company, the CEO wouldn't be a middle-aged man, but at least he wouldn't be too young. And it's a woman." Song Ing was annoyed, but she resisted the urge to roll her eyes. She smiled and said, "I don't intend to hide it. It's just that not many people will believe me if I announce my identity from the beginning. Sit, don't stand and talk." The two beautiful women sat up facing each other. Renziling recalled the day when she met Song Ing. "No. Didn't you say you majored in acting?" Song Ing blinked and said, "I did minor in drama when I was in school, but my main job was to take care of the family business." Seeing that Renziling had already started to write down everything, she was a little surprised. In fact, she also liked employees who were serious in their work. In fact, the identities of these two people were a little strange. Song Ing couldn't help but whisper in her heart. The company where Renziling worked was secretly bought by her. In theory, she was the boss behind Boss Luochio. But this company actually belonged to Luochio in name. According to the template of a melodramatic palace drama, Nanny Ren was equivalent to the identity of the Empress Dowager of the new company. Song Ing was actually working for Luochio in the new company. Song Ing was very clear about the complicated relationship, but Renziling didn't know. But even so, the two were sitting here at this time, one was being interviewed, the other was being interviewed. No matter how you think about it, it's the dead head's fault. A dissatisfied voice sounded in Miss Ying's heart. Family business? Once Renziling got into the role, she quickly put aside the curiosity of personal identity and got to the topic. "Well, I read the introduction of your company on the invitation letter. Your company is planning to make a name for itself in the field of biotechnology. Miss Song, can you tell me about your company?" "Of course." Song Ing smiled slightly. What followed was a simple and boring question and answer session. Renziling felt that the young and beautiful CEO of this company was not as simple as she looked. Song Ing did not evade her questions directly. She revealed some of her answers, but she needed to guess more on her own. Even after a few days of harsh questions, she only touched on the surface. Basically, this was the type of interview that Renziling had encountered in her many years of work. Unknowingly, 40 minutes had passed. Song Ing suddenly said, "Miss Ren, I'll get my assistant to organize some more detailed information about my company for you later." Renziling paused for a moment and subconsciously glanced at the time. It seemed that the other party was going to end the interview. However, she had already obtained enough material, and had even exceeded her expectations. Later on, the other party would voluntarily send her more information, so there was nothing she could be dissatisfied with. "If that's the case, He didn't finish his sentence. Song Ing said coldly, "Can I call you Big Sister Ren?" "What?" Song Ing said softly. "I don't know why, but when I saw you for the first time, I felt that you were particularly kind, just like my sister. In fact, I haven't been here for a long time. Strictly speaking, you are the first friend I made." "Why do I feel like I've been tricked?" Nanny Ren couldn't help but mutter in her heart, but she couldn't think of anything that could be tricked. Does the other party want to do public relations work? But there are many media outlets out there that are better than her small magazine company. As for tricking others, it was even more impossible. Nanny Ren still had a 20-year mortgage and a 3-year car loan. Although she was promoted and got a raise, she still didn't get rid of the group of working dogs. That's not a problem. Renziling didn't give herself too much time to ponder. It was purely a social reaction. From the perspective of a reporter, it was not a bad thing to make more friends with powerful people. Maybe these shallow friendships could be used in the future. But as a woman, Nanny Ren suddenly had a wonderful sixth sense at this moment. She always felt that the mysterious girl who came from a foreign family to invest in China was not her target. Speaking of which, how did you and my boy know each other? After Nanny Wren added a wave of IQ to herself, she asked tentatively, logically speaking, you should have finished your studies abroad. How could you be classmates with Luochio? Yes. Song Ying smiled slightly. They should have just met recently. Ren Xiling began to think about something consciously. Speaking of which, she just noticed that Luochio had gone on several long trips in the past year. She didn't even know what Luochio had been doing since he dropped out of school. Thinking of this, she felt very strange. It seemed that she had never taken the initiative to pay attention to this issue, and she couldn't remember to pay attention to it. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be like this. People say that pregnancy makes a woman stupid for 3 years, and her IQ is lower. The key is that she doesn't even have a man. Is it really because she is old? Seeing Ren Xiling's suspicious face, Song Ying smiled slightly and said something that made the little plot in Nanny Wren's mind start to become exciting. Sister Wren, if I say that Luochio and I are friends of life and death, would you believe it? Friends of life and death. Ren Xiling was taken aback and subconsciously asked, To what extent? No, he must have encountered some kind of danger. Wait, is this your performance again? Song Ying smiled and didn't say anything. Ren Xiling only felt that this girl was a bit like a witch, and she couldn't figure it out. She shook her head and was a little dissatisfied in her heart, so her tone was a little bit lighter. Miss Song, I'm just a small reporter, and my family is just an ordinary family. There's nothing fun about it. Although it's a bit offensive to talk like this, I still have to say it. If Miss Song really wants to make friends, even if I'm climbing up the social ladder, I don't care what others say. If Miss Song just wants to have fun, then I can only politely decline. Why does she have the same personality as that dead person? She turns hostile just like that. Miss Song felt that it was counterproductive, so she said pitifully, Sister Wren, I really didn't mean to tease you, but he didn't let me say it. I'm afraid that he will be angry. Continue acting. You're a bad woman. Ren Xiling already had a dubious idea, and at this time, she didn't feel anything in her heart. Song Ying felt that she was trapped in a cocoon of her own making, so she had to sigh helplessly. Miss Wren, I'm sorry to have made you have so many misunderstandings. This exclusive interview is actually a small compensation for lying to you last time. It's just an accident that I met Luochio. I don't have any thoughts about it, so don't misunderstand. With such an explanation, Ren Xiling's dubious attitude was more inclined to believe it, or in other words, it was actually more reasonable. She nodded, as if she understood this explanation. She thought that this rich young lady, who took care of business for her family, might just behave like a rich young lady. It was normal for her to do things her own way. She didn't mean to offend Song Ying too much, but she was a little puzzled by Song Ying's sudden softening. It's fine as long as we talk about it. Ren Xiling smiled slightly. Miss Song, I know you're busy. Since the interview is over, then I won't disturb you. Of course, if Miss Song still thinks of me next time and wants to continue the interview, I'll be very happy. Thank you very much for accepting my interview today. Song Ying opened her mouth and wanted to say something to persuade her to stay, but she couldn't say it. She really felt a little stuffy and uncomfortable. It shouldn't be like this. I'll send you off. She was full of words, but finally squeezed out this sentence. When she was about to go out, Nanny Wren suddenly turned around, which caught Song Ying off guard. Then she heard Ren Xiling suspiciously say, I say, don't tell me you're interested in my stinky boy. How can I like that damn? Song Ying suddenly stopped, and her ears were a little hot. Oh! Nanny Wren narrowed her eyes. Compared with the reasonable reason before, her sixth sense was more inclined to Song Ying's expression. Nanny Wren smiled and said, But your opponent is very strong. But I won't intervene in the affairs of young people, so good luck. Until Ren Xiling left, Song Ying didn't say a word. Ziyun later made a pot of coffee and sent it over, but she saw Song Ing sitting on the cushion in the lounge area with her chin in her hand, looking out of the window and thinking about something. "Miss, didn't you find out about Master Chio's girlfriend? What are you talking about?" Song Ing snorted and said discontentedly, "You're talking as if I want to know. That damn guy is a descendant of the Song family, and he will definitely get the Song family's property from Grandpa in the future. Of course, I have the obligation to investigate clearly. How can I let a woman into the family?" Yes, you're right, miss." Ziyun smiled and said, "This is for the Song family." Song Ing glanced at her and snorted coldly, "You're not allowed to play with your phone anymore. I can apply to go back to school to be remolded. I'll remold you first." Song Ing sneered, and suddenly threw Ziyun on the tatami and reached out to touch her. "Miss, don't. The instructor didn't teach this lesson." In the evening, when Nan Xiaonan returned to the apartment building, she suddenly received a text message on her phone. She glanced at it and was stunned. The person who sent the text message was Ren Xiling, asking if she would like to go to her house and stay for a while. Her tone was quite sincere. Nan Xiaonan was quite tempted by this proposal. She knew Ren Xiling's actual situation, and of course, she understood that if she could stay with this woman, her safety would be maximized instantly. But whose idea was it? Did Mr. Luo allow it? Before figuring out the situation, Nan Xiaonan didn't want to act rashly. She pressed the elevator button and walked into the elevator. At the same time, she was thinking about Austin Pharmaceuticals. After the underground laboratory's cultivation chamber exploded that night, she took advantage of the chaos and left. The next night, she actually went to investigate again, but there was a sudden fire at Austin Pharmaceuticals the next night. She could only give up. But what made her feel strange was that the people who were lying in ambush around her seemed to have left. At least, in her true sight, she didn't feel any danger. It seemed that she still needed to find out more about Austin Pharmaceuticals. She would go again tonight, Nan Xiaonan thought to herself. At the same time, she walked out of the elevator and took out the key to the apartment door. Someone was inside. Nan Xiaonan's pupils contracted slightly, but she didn't hesitate or even pause. She opened the door with the key and walked into the apartment. She saw a man standing in front of the bookcase next to the computer desk, looking at a photo frame in his hand. This photo frame was broken by Ren Xiling, and she changed it later. This was the relic of Nan Xiaonan. She looked at the man. She remembered that he was also in the underground laboratory that night, and he was Mr. House's assistant. At the end of that night, she was secretly set up by this man. Now that she thought about it, she even felt that the explosion of the cultivation chamber at the end of the experiment had something to do with this man. His name seemed to be Jimmy? Click, click. She gently closed the door and at the same time pressed her palm on the electric switch at the entrance. A dark red mark vaguely appeared on her palm and quietly disappeared into the electric switch. "I remember that no outsider is given the key here," she said indifferently. "Jimmy." Tang Tianlin put down the photo frame, turned around and looked at her carefully. After a moment of silence, he said, "Relax, Medical Examiner Nan. I'm not here to deal with you today." Nan Xiaonan sneered and walked into the living room. "Is that so?" "I don't think so. You arranged a lot of people to kill the mastermind behind the ambush around my house. You don't mean to deal with me." Tang Tianlin sat down. "I've removed all those people. No one will monitor you anymore, and no one will deal with you. You can rest assured." "Thank you so much." Tang Tianlin frowned, seeming to be puzzled. "When did you become so good at fighting?" "That night." "I don't know what you're talking about." Nan Xiaonan stood still. Tang Tianlin looked at her in surprise for a while, and then shook his head. "You've become a little different. But maybe I've never really understood you." "I don't understand you either," Nan Xiaonan said casually. Tang Tianlin thought for a while, and then suddenly said, "House is dying. Austin Pharmaceuticals is now under my control. So what? Tang Tianlin looked at her and said, You know why I was born. You were also one of the participants of the experiment. You should be able to understand why I betrayed House this time. Only a ghost would understand. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was just inexplicably involved in this subworld, and then miserably inherited the identity of Nan Xiaonan. You came to me just to tell me your ambition? She could only sneer. Tang Tianlin shook his head and said seriously, Lady Nan, I want to invite you to participate in the experiment again. Also, I already have news of perfect human cells. She opened her mouth. Chapter 1265. She was completely dumbfounded by Tang Tianlin's invitation and the perfect human cells mentioned in the invitation. Her slightly accelerated mind once again searched the memories left by Nan Xiaonan, but she didn't find anything. There was only a sense of urgency, or rather, a part of the obsession left by Nan Xiaonan. Of course, for a saint teacher of star creation, she couldn't show that she was dumbfounded, otherwise she wouldn't be able to show off perfect human cells. She thought to herself. Her palm naturally pressed against her back as she prepared an ability that was just right for her to use. She said calmly, Have you really found it? Tang Tianlin shook his head. I don't have the exact information yet, but I have a clue. And I believe that I will get more specific information soon. What do you think? I know that whether it's you, your teacher, or even the members of the laboratory back then, all of you are quite interested in it. After all, it was because of the perfect human cells that your teacher was able to observe the human genome map to the limit of 999%. She sneered and said, Why should I believe the words of a person who secretly sent people to assassinate me? Tang Tianlin said, If I wanted to deal with you, I wouldn't have come to you alone today, and I wouldn't have withdrawn those people. Now that I've betrayed House, there's no need to make another enemy for myself. What's your purpose? As she spoke, she naturally took 2 steps forward. There was only a coffee table between her and Tang Tianlin. You don't need to ask. Tang Tianlin looked at her and said sincerely, But I promise that when everything is over, I will tell you everything. Is that so? She nodded her head, but the palm that was behind her back gently swept forward. Tang Tianlin didn't know the meaning of this action. He just became absent-minded for a moment, and his whole person became lifeless. Who is scheming with you here? Transcendents should use transcendence means to solve their problems, mortal. She casually stretched and made herself a cup of chocolate cereal. Then, she pulled out her computer chair and sat with her legs crossed. She stirred the cup with a spoon while sizing up Tang Tianlin. There was no doubt that she needed to know more about Nan Xiaonan. Not the identity of Nan Xiaonan as a forensic doctor, but another identity related to Austin Pharmaceuticals, House, and so on. The man in front of her was obviously a good source of information. When one was sleepy, a pillow came, and when luck came, there was no stopping it. Could it be because her bad luck had been neutralized after staying at Mr. S' house for a few days? She licked her lips. Should she accept Renzeiling's invitation or not? What was the purpose of the laboratory you mentioned back then? Tang Tianlin was in a state of speaking the truth. This method was like an apprentice-level method for the former saint teacher of stellar creation and grand arcanist. In the dismembered body case, the witness created this method. This laboratory had 2 purposes. Tang Tianlin slowly said, First, it was to help House obtain immortality and try to create a replacement body for him. However, although the current technology can clone a real person, there is no way to transfer consciousness. She nodded. She was at the scene of the experiment a few nights ago. The so-called consciousness transfer was just a lie. The science and technology of this subworld hadn't reached the realm of mind science yet. What's the second purpose? The second purpose was to clone perfect humans and create the most perfect human beings to revolutionize human evolution. She was obviously more interested in their second objective. Even in her original world, the evolution of human beings was a very important and difficult topic to solve. Perfect human, or should I say, what is a perfect human cell? She asked curiously. Perfect human being, or perfect individual, refers to a perfect human being. Tang Tianlin sounded like he was yearning. Even in this almost hypnotic state, it seemed that he couldn't hide the passion in his heart. A human being who has the most perfect genes, the most perfect metabolism, immunity to all diseases, and whose body can be maintained at a critical point of vitality forever. A human being who doesn't age and die. Who doesn't age and die? She was surprised. Immortality was a relative proposition. The scope of immortality was too wide. What was the real immortality? Did they know the concept of immortality? However, if the fruit world was destroyed and all matter was reorganized, would immortality be able to withstand it? If immortality could be maintained for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years, this kind of existence had surpassed the whole human consciousness several times, or even hundreds of thousands of times. It seemed that it could also be called immortality. She pursued eternity in order to find the original world, which seemed to have the secret of becoming truly eternal. The perfect human seemed to have provided her with some clues. Could it be that this subworld really contained the big secret of eternity? Suddenly, she had a feeling of good fortune. She had a flash of inspiration. Could it be that the reason why Mr. Luo stayed in this subworld was related to this big secret? It seemed to make sense. Apparently, only the secret of eternity could be retained, which was obviously beyond the level of emperors. Otherwise, she really couldn't understand why such a high-level life form didn't explore but chose to stay in this subworld instead. Did you really find the perfect human? Believe it, tell me the situation. How did you find it? When did you find it? She wanted to believe it, but it was hard to convince herself that a group of mortals could actually find multiple subworlds. Even she didn't know how many explorers had been trying to do this for countless years. Tang Tianlin didn't hold back. He responded to her question and said slowly, "The first person who found the perfect human was House. It was during World War II. During World War II, House was a junior officer in the anti-imperialist Alliance Army. At first, he didn't have any plans to make a name for himself. He only wanted the convenience of his military rank so that he could resell and smuggle drugs on the war-torn continent. Simply put, he was just a businessman who wanted to make money from the war. However, during one of his drug smuggling operations, House and his smuggling team accidentally crossed a swamp and discovered the existence of the perfect human. It was a simple wooden house built in an ancient forest. However, in an environment full of miasma, it was obviously not a suitable place to live. But House found a male corpse in the house. He said it was a corpse because the man was no longer breathing and had no heartbeat, but looking at the extent of dust on the body, House was puzzled. This mysterious man had probably been lying in the house for more than a few years. Over the years, this lifeless body didn't rot in the humid environment. His skin was like a living person's, full of elasticity and even retained body temperature. It was much lower than an ordinary person's body temperature, but it was obviously not at the level of a cold corpse. This mysterious man seemed to be a huaxia. House did many experiments on the man's body. For example, he cut it. However, the wound began to heal at an extremely fast speed, but no blood flowed out of the wound. House tried to burn the body with fire until it was like charcoal. However, after peeling off the surface layer, the body was still intact. The people in the smuggling team shouted that the mysterious man was a monster, a demon. They even used explosives to blow the body to pieces. Finally, the mysterious man's body completely turned into a pile of flesh and blood. No blood flowed out of the mysterious man's body when the body was blown up. However, after the body was blown up, blood could be seen. The blood was like a gel, clearly existing in the muscle tissue and blood vessels. They burned the pile of flesh and blood again, but when the fire was extinguished, the body once again appeared in perfect condition before everyone's eyes. Several people in the smuggling team were scared out of their wits because of this. Later, House suppressed everyone's opposition and took the mysterious man's body away. Tang Tianlin slowly narrated. He was completely obsessed with this body and began to study it crazily. After the war, House gained a lot of wealth and began to devote himself to the field of biotechnology. All these years, he has been studying this perfect human body. He has been unconscious all this time, right? She heard the most important part of the story. Tang Tianlin nodded, yes. Through the examination of brainwaves, it was found that he did not have brainwaves. She was greatly shaken. She could not help coming up with a conclusion before she had seen that so-called perfect person, but she had a theory based on Tang Tianlin's description alone, a body that had no consciousness but could not be destroyed. That was the legendary level of physical immortality in the subworlds of certain magnates. She had occasionally met and conversed with some of the explorers, which was why she knew a little about it. Could it be an explorer of some giant civilization's subworld accidentally fell in this subworld? What happened after that? You guys just made no progress like this? Tang Tianlin said. With the continuous establishment of the discipline, House's research on this body gradually deepened, but he still could not get any useful results. But House began to age. All these years, in order to obtain the secret of immortality, he did not even leave behind any descendants until Dr. Will Douglas appeared. However, when this name was mentioned, she clearly felt some emotional fluctuations, so she said, "He's my teacher, right?" "Yes." Tang Tianlin nodded silently. In the beginning, it was House who found him and invited him to participate in the research of the perfect human. Later, he was like House. He was so immersed in the research of the perfect human that he forgot to eat and sleep. In fact, the first purpose of the research lab was to create a replacement body for House, but it was only a side result of the research. At that time, the cloning technology in the lab could freely modulate the life characteristics of the cloned individual and even fix the age, height, and all aspects of the individual's body ability. She waved her hand. "I'm not interested in that old man's dream of immortality. Back to the perfect human, have you tried to integrate this man's cells in a biological way?" "Yes, but without exception, the test subjects all died directly." Tang Tianlin said woodenly, "Perfect human cells can't be integrated with external cells, so later on we planned to clone him. At first, we thought that if we could cultivate the cells into a viable embryo, perhaps another perfect human would be born, and one with consciousness. We really wanted to know if the perfect human would have high intelligence after gaining consciousness. If they did, perhaps they would be able to learn and research, and in the end, they would be able to provide new help to the research. We thought that they might have learning abilities, logical abilities, deduction abilities, and so on that far surpassed that of humans." "Success, failure?" she asked solemnly. These mortals might be very weak, but at the same time they were also very crazy. She had to admit that on the path of exploration, even mortals would not have it easier than superhumans like her. There was only a difference in abilities between superhumans and mortals, but there was no difference in essence. Progress, she suddenly remembered this word. The early preparations were actually done, but the experiment hadn't officially started yet. Tang Tianlin shook his head and said, "Because when the experiment was about to start, a group of mysterious forces suddenly broke in and almost stole all of our research results. At that time, the situation was very rushed, and the people of the mysterious forces were quite terrifying. Our guards were completely unable to fight back. Later on, House called for reinforcements, but they didn't seem to be our original people. I'm not sure, because at that time we could only focus on running away. In the end, the mysterious forces still stole the research results, and even the perfect human was taken away by them. In order to buy time, House even betrayed all of us and treated us as abandoned pawns. In the end, Teacher protected us at all costs and bought time for me to escape. You should know what happened after that. She was more concerned about the mysterious forces, so she didn't pay attention to how Tang Tianlin addressed her as teacher. She didn't even think about the change of we. After that, the mysterious forces didn't come to you again? Tang Tianlin said. They should have, but they seem to be very weak in China. Or rather, they haven't reached the point where they can do whatever they want. Or rather, they have already taken all the research results, including the perfect human, so they didn't bother to do anything to us. Then what about the perfect human cells you mentioned? House is a person who is naturally suspicious and insecure. He is used to making several preparations, so he secretly kept a cell tissue taken from the perfect human and hid it. But only he knows where he hid it. So, you have information about the cells now? That's right. In the end, she finished the cup of cereal and licked the cup and spoon clean out of habit. In the end, she smiled and said, "Very good. You've successfully piqued my interest. Where's the immortal body?" At the same time, she suddenly snapped her fingers. Tang Tianlin suddenly blinked. Then, he saw that the other party was now sitting in a sitting position, and a trace of doubt flashed across his eyes. He felt that something was wrong, but she didn't give him time to think more carefully. Instead, she said slowly, "I promise you." "What?" Tang Tianlin was stunned. She stood up and said, "I look forward to working with you." Chapter 1266. Regarding Nan Xiaonan's promise, Tang Tianlin seemed to have a well-thought-out plan. He just did not expect her to agree so readily. He had prepared another set of excuses, but he did not need to use them. But in this way, he naturally took a small step forward in what he wanted to do. Since both sides had agreed to cooperate, Tang Tianlin meant that she should leave her current job as soon as possible. Originally, she had no choice but to become a forensic doctor in order to avoid the mysterious forces. Just like when he was still Qin Zheng, Tang Tianlin did not intend to reveal her true identity for the time being. Perhaps he had such a plan before, but now it had changed. The reason was because of what happened in the underground research room of Austin Pharmaceuticals a few nights ago. He had confirmed that she was the person from that night. But in his memory, Nan Xiaonan did not have such an amazing combat ability. It would be hard to believe that this was the result of her training in the past few years. As a researcher, she did not have much time to train her body, let alone reach the level of fighting 20 or 30 blood-stained mercenaries by herself. He could not help but recall the part that Nan Xiaonan was responsible for in the laboratory a few years ago. She had been tackling the topic of how to fuse perfect human cells with external cells. Connecting this to her extraordinary performance a few nights ago, Tang Tianlin had another bold hypothesis in his mind. Could it be that Nan Xiaonan had secretly developed a perfect human cell fusion plan during the few years she was hiding? She used it as a foundation and experimented on herself. That was why she could have such a terrifying combat ability in just a few years. Tang Tianlin's hypothesis was not baseless. It was because he was very clear about the horror of perfect human cells. It was like a huge treasure trove that could not be opened. Even if it was just a tiny thing taken from the treasure trove, it could be a huge technological innovation. If Nan Xiaonan had really completed the cell fusion, would she evolve into another perfect human in the future? Her cells? Had her genes changed as well? "I suddenly feel something bad from your eyes." Suddenly, Nan Xiaonan's voice rang in his ears. He was suddenly startled. In addition to the extraordinary physical ability, could it be that even her senses had improved? Tang Tianlin said slowly, "It's a little bad. I received news that the person who saved House during the attack of the mysterious forces seems to be planning to rescue House this time as well. There is no doubt that House used the perfect human cells he hid as a reward." Nan Xiaonan. She frowned and resisted the urge to hypnotize this guy. Instead, she sneered, I was wondering why you chose this time to come to me. It seems that you are in trouble and want to ask me for help, right? When did you find out? Tang Tianlin said indifferently, I was created by all of you after all. During that period of time, I observed all of you carefully. I have a deep understanding of your voices, body shapes, and characteristics. Besides, you didn't try to hide yourself at that time. You didn't even change your voice. God knows you guys have so many tricks up your sleeves, she muttered in her heart. If she knew there was someone she knew, she wouldn't be so casual. In fact, she hadn't tried to be careful for a long time. In the words of this subworld, it was, she had been used to solving problems for too long. She was too lazy to use her IQ. But in fact, someone had already sounded the alarm for her. It was Mr. Luo. Otherwise, she wouldn't be in the mood to talk so much with this Tang Tianlin at this time. Of course, there was also the reason why she was interested in the perfect human and perfect human cells. But according to common sense, Nan Xiaonan couldn't show that level of combat ability, right? She narrowed her eyes and asked with a smile, Aren't you curious why I can kill so many guards? But Tang Tianlin shook his head and stood up slowly. Is it strange? As he spoke, he pinched up his sleeves until they reached his elbows. Then he clenched his fists and exhaled. Whoa! Suddenly, the area below his elbow to his fist instantly swelled up, exposing his root. This part of his skin even turned into a metallic gray color. It even faintly glowed with a metallic luster. This half of his arm had actually swelled to more than double its original size. At this time, Tang Tianlin loosened his 5 fingers and pinched the corner of the tea table, directly crushing the hard wood. After that, this mutated arm gradually returned to its original state, but the speed of recovery was much slower than the mutation. She frowned thoughtfully and said, Perfect human cells? It's just a method of mutation, Tang Tianlin said indifferently. Or do you think that House has made no progress in anything other than cloning technology in the past few years? You and I both have some secrets. I don't want to ask you, in order to show my sincerity. She kept silent for a while before asking, When will those people come to save House? It might be soon. It might be tonight or tomorrow. She nodded. Wait outside for a while, I'll change my clothes. The night was falling. The car window slowly rolled down and then slowly rolled up again. About 10 minutes had passed between the opening and closing of the car window. Zhong Luochen's finger didn't leave the window button. The car was parked on one side of the street, not far from the ceramic studio. Qing Yun stayed by his side and didn't disturb him. Every few days, second young master would ask someone to drive the car to Miss Ink's studio and just stay there. In fact, it was very difficult to see that figure in the studio. Sometimes it couldn't even be seen. Usually, second young master would come here because he was in a bad mood. He had been following Zhong Luochen for some time, so he could naturally judge the mood of the rice leader. Qing Yun, have you heard of the word wishful thinking? Zhong Luochen suddenly said. The car window was stopped halfway. Qing Yun, who was absent-minded, didn't notice whether it was meant to be closed or open. Of course I have. Qing Yun carefully tried to figure out the young master's thoughts and smiled. Wishful thinking, but it's not absolute. What do you mean? Zhong Luochen turned around. Qing Yun said, Take me for example. 5 years ago, it was wishful thinking for me to own wealth, mansions, and luxury cars. But now I own them, so they are not wishful thinking. Therefore, wishful thinking is not absolute, because there must be a bridge leading to the realization of wishful thinking. Zhong Luochen smiled faintly. Are you saying that I am your bridge? Qing Yun hurriedly said, Of course not. Second young master, you are the continent on the other side of the bridge. If my bridge can't reach you, then it's wishful thinking. Zhong Luochen chuckled and suddenly asked, Wei Xiaobao and Hushin, which one do you prefer? Qing Yun muttered, Only kids choose, adults like both. Greedy. Zhong Luochen shook his head. The car window was finally closed, and Zhong Luochen said to the driver, "Let's go. Let's go back and see the progress of 24 Master." A new batch of experimental subjects had been transferred to the basement of the company building and handed over to 24. This time there were more than 10 experimental subjects. Hopefully there would be some progress. While the car was slowly driving away, Miss Ink, who was on the second floor of the pottery studio not far away, glanced at it casually and then withdrew her gaze. The clay slowly rotated on the plate, and was gradually shaped by her hands. It was a human figure, but she didn't pinch its face. Many finished pottery idols here didn't have faces. Still can't remember. Late at night, in the courtyard of the private hospital under the name of Austin Pharmaceutical Company, 4 men wearing white masks and hoods, dressed in combat uniforms, easily climbed over the wall. Their equipment was excellent, not inferior to the country's special forces. The 4 of them communicated with hand gestures and sneaked into the hospital bit by bit. Their action was well planned. This time there were 10 people in total. 4 of them were responsible for the rescue operation, 2 of them were outside the hospital to provide support and help to escape, and the other 4 were in the agreed place, preparing the tools to leave, and responsible for deployment and intelligence collection. It's still very easy. Along the way, the 4 rescuers didn't encounter any danger except for knocking out several hospital security guards. Don't let down your guard, this is the person Mr. Wally wants. Good, 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 you're about to become Mr. Wally's dog. Jokes and bickering existed along the way. They were just a group of lunatics, mercenaries, and not regular soldiers. Although they were fast and experienced, they didn't have any discipline, and naturally didn't have the so-called sense of honor. The place where House was placed under house arrest had already been found. When the 4 rescuers arrived at the destination, they finally saw some guards. There were 3 guys in black suits, 2 white and 1 black. The 4 of them lurked, monitoring the situation of the 3 bodyguard. It's the security personnel of Benitel. Finally, it's a little challenging. Action Plan 3, okay? Go! At this time, a rescuer rolled a smoke bomb on the ground. The 3 Benitel security personnel guarding outside the door were instantly alert. Thick smoke filled the corridor in a few seconds, and the 4 figures rushed into the thick smoke in an instant. Only 2 gunshots and several muffled groans were heard. Soon after, the door of the intensive care unit was directly kicked open. 2 rescuers walked in unscathed. But the other 2 had already fallen to the ground, one of them even had his neck broken. 4 against 3, and in a situation where they had the upper hand, 2 of the rescuers were still down. Of course, the 3 bodyguards were naturally killed. Tal, I'll remember you. Cut the crap, quickly evacuate with the others. The moment he spoke, the rescuer quickly walked to the hospital bed. As for the other person, he communicated with the person who was waiting for him outside. That person casually kicked away the equipment beside the bed and walked to the side of the bed, but at this time, the person lying on the bed suddenly sat up and punched him in the chest. Like being hit by a speeding motorcycle, the man's sternum was instantly shattered, and his strong body was directly sent flying by the punch. The sudden change shocked the last rescuer. Did I fall into a trap? He reacted quickly and instinctively raised his pistol, but he did not expect that the person who jumped up from the bed at this moment actually moved the bed directly and directly threw it at him. How could he dodge? The intensive care unit was not spacious, and everything happened so suddenly that he could not dodge at all. His body collided with the bed, and his whole body was directly smashed to the ground, seeing stars. He did not have time to think about what happened, and his first reaction was to inform the 2 people outside. But the moment he took out his communicator, his wrist was directly stepped on. The other party directly kicked away his communicator. "Who are you?" he asked in horror. In the dim light, he could only see a young man. Strangely, the right sleeve of the patient gown was completely broken. The young man did not speak, but directly inserted a syringe into his neck. It seemed that he injected something. "What did you inject into me?" He was inevitably frightened. The young man squatted down, grabbing his hair with one hand, and said indifferently, "A virus that will make your internal organs rot. Of course, before the rot starts, the pain will make you have the impulse to directly commit suicide. Believe me, you should know that you are facing a pharmaceutical company." His mask had been taken off, revealing a frightened expression. "You? What do you want me to do?" The young man smiled indifferently. "How about making a deal?" He opened his eyes wide, almost without hesitation. Mercenaries naturally did not have many rules. "What should I do?" He did not even ask for the price, because the current situation did not allow him to bargain. Outside the hospital, inside a van. The interior of the van looked far more simple than the exterior. At this time, the communication device in the van kept buzzing. In the van, a relatively thin woman yawned and picked up the communicator. She glanced at the guy who was sitting on the seat with a strange face and was already dead, then turned on the communicator and slowly called a few times. "I'm done here. How about your side?" It was the voice of Tang Tianlin. She smiled faintly. "Should be earlier than you. Remember to spread the news before they come. Then let's start the next step of the plan." Chapter 1267. 4 people wearing white masks and combat suits quickly broke into the room. While they were breaking in, Mr. House was struggling in the room. He resisted with his seemingly harmless body, but his limbs were secured by strap. "Let go. Let go of me." Just when he was in despair, these 4 masked armed men who had intruded were no less than a blessing to him. He was not a believer and did not believe in God, but at this time, he had an impulse to praise God. "Who are you?" The doctors and nurses huddled together in horror, because 2 masked armed men were pointing guns at them. At the same time, the other 2 men came to House and untied him. One of them said in a low voice, "Are you House?" "Are you Wally?" House asked excitedly. The man didn't answer but quickly said, "Mr. House, we need to evacuate as soon as possible. Many of Bertani's men are hired here." "Damn it. I hired them. All of them, sh*t. Even so, he suppressed the anger in his heart. As long as he could get out of this place, as long as he could get to Wally, as long as he would get everything back. The masked armed man nodded and carried House on his back. They quickly left the hospital. The flash bombs and smoke bombs caused a lot of commotion. House felt like he was back in the war era of the last century. He crossed one smuggling route after another in the rain of bullets. All he could hear was a cacophony of voices. His head was groggy as he was brought to a modified van not long after. House seemed to be in better spirits. Maybe it was because he was out of danger. "Thank God, your kindness will be rewarded." A masked armed man suddenly took out a mini detector and scanned House's body. "What are you doing?" House was quite dissatisfied. This guy's actions were not civilized. "Sir, relax." At this time, the other person said indifferently, "He just wants to see if you have any signal device or something like that on your body. You don't want to be caught right after escaping, right?" Howe was shocked and quickly said, "You guys continue." Suddenly, the detector beeped. It was right where House's heart was. House hurriedly said, "I have a pacemaker." The inspector did not say a word. He continued to scan all the way down. The detector under House's feet rang again. "Is there a pacemaker here too?" House shuddered. Before he could say anything, his leg was lifted up. Then, someone took a small knife and cut a hole under his foot. Using a pair of tweezers, they took out something the size of a finger. "It must be Jimmy. That damn traitor." House couldn't care less about the wound on the soles of his feet. His face suddenly turned ferocious. At the same time, he was very satisfied that the people sent by Wally were so careful. At least, he temporarily let down his guard against the people in the car. Of course, this was before he saw Wally. His name was Ichi, and he grew up in the Siberian plateau. Later on, he joined the local boxing training camp, and finally became a mercenary. He was also the only one of the 10 people who survived this time. At the dock, looking at the 4 former companions who were preparing for the final evacuation route, Ichi did not even feel sad. The only thing he was afraid of was that his body was injected with an unknown virus. It wasn't that Ichi didn't think that this could just be a lie, but what if it was true? 9 out of 10 people who made drugs and sold drugs were crazy. He was not a gambler. Between life and death, the only thing he could do was to agree to cooperate with the other party. Not to mention, putting aside the weapons that had been confiscated, in terms of pure hand-to-hand combat ability, he was far inferior to the young man in front of him who could pick up the bed with one hand and throw it at him. The young man was sitting on a chair at this time, holding a small scalpel in his hand. The scalpel was jumping between his fingers. Ichi's eyelids fiercely twitched a few times. It was very rare to see someone who could use a scalpel to protect a butterfly knife. This young man's scalpel might be more terrifying than his fist. Of the 4 mercenaries on the ground, 2 of them had their throats slit by this very scalpel. In addition, there was a woman who looked very dry in Ichi's eyes, but this woman alone defeated the other 2 mercenaries. After you rescue House, what are you going to do next? The young man looked straight at Ichi. Ichi did not dare to look at the young man's eyes. He boasted that he had killed a lot of people, but the young man's eyes made him feel like he was on the operating table and would be dismembered at any time. He was simply like a butcher. We'll leave directly from this dock and take a cargo ship to Shanghai. Our company's cargo ship is there. We'll drive to Mara first and then take a plane from there. Our final destination is the UK. The young man, Tang Tianlin, narrowed his eyes slightly. It'll take at least 4 or 5 days, but you've only been here for less than 2 days. Ichi said with cold sweat. We didn't set off from the UK at the beginning. Our people are moving around the world. At this moment, the woman who was resting against the wall suddenly opened her eyes. She saw 2 beams of light coming in. A van had arrived outside. Tang Tianlin stood up and said indifferently, House has been rescued. Act according to your original plan. I'll leave the matter of contacting your boss to you. As he spoke, he suddenly pulled out the scalpel in his hand. The metal blade directly swept across Ichi's face, cutting a small wound and finally nailing it into the wall behind him. Okay, at the same time, Tang Tianlin and her directly put on the white mask and the same combat suit, walking side by side to put them on. At this time, she said, I didn't promise you that I'll leave so suddenly and for such a long time. Tang Tianlin said casually, opportunities don't wait for people. If you miss this opportunity, you may lose the whereabouts of the perfect human cells forever. She was silent for a moment. Finally, she shook her head and walked away. She stood alone on the railing and looked at the river ahead. After a while, she took out her phone and sent 2 messages. One was to Xiao Bao, asking him to take a long leave for her. Although she was very interested in the perfect human cells, she obviously didn't intend to give up her identity as a forensic doctor here. This was the identity that allowed her to have contact with Ren Xiling. The second was naturally to Ren Xiling, telling her that she had some personal matters to attend to and had to leave for a while. As for moving over, they would talk about it when she came back. Not long after, House was supported by 2 large men and walked to the front. Ichi wasn't originally the captain of the 10-man team this time, and was only the vice-captain, but now, he naturally became the new captain of the 10-man team, and was responsible for maintaining contact with House and the real boss of the British side. She silently watched all these happening. Tang Tianlin's plan was actually very rushed, but surprisingly effective. Although Tang Tianlin had been very careful, she still didn't trust Ichi, so she flicked her finger. A dark red imprint silently entered Ichi's body in the night, fusing into the necklace he wore around his neck. Well, it was better to be prepared, she thought. Soon after, the boat began to sail out of the dock, but her face suddenly changed. Oh no! She didn't know how long this trip would take, and she forgot to take the jam with her. She reached out her hand to the railing, heartbroken. My food, in front of the dock. Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao put down the binoculars in their hands at the same time. Lu Mingho lit a cigarette and took a puff. Brother Hao, what are these people doing? It seems they are leaving? Wei Zidao frowned. Who is the old man they took away? He looks familiar. That old man's name is House. On the surface, he's a foreign investor in our country. His business is very big, and he has many business partnerships with the Zhao family. Lu Mingho said calmly, of course, behind the scenes, he's a drug dealer who smuggles drugs in the European continent. How can this person be related to the vampire family of the Devil's Feast Alliance? I don't know. Lu Mingho shook his head. Originally, House's matter wasn't under our jurisdiction. It was the National Security Bureau's matter. But now, how about this? Go back and write a report and hand it to the branch office. I think our overseas intelligence system will start working. What about the riot in the hospital? Lu Mingho shrugged and said, there's still the police. Besides, House isn't Chinese. These foreigners can do whatever they want. As long as they're not targeting our countrymen, we'll just pretend we didn't see anything. He then looked at the time. It was 10:30 p.m. It's late. Let's go back. 3 hours ago, Luoqiu returned home. She wasn't surprised to see Lizzie sitting on the sofa in the living room, and then she saw Ren Xiling fighting in the kitchen. Nanny Ren, who had the aura of an auntie, stood outside the kitchen door with a spatula in one hand, but her image collapsed in an instant. She didn't say anything like washing her hands first before dinner was ready. Instead, she asked pitifully, where did you put the Zhuhou sauce? Luoqiu sighed slightly, shaking her head. She took the spatula from Ren Xiling and put on a new apron. Let me take over, I don't want to spend twice as much time cleaning. Can we still be friends? It's all here. Luoqiu didn't even look at it. He opened one of the cabinets and said casually, I put all the spices that are not commonly used here. Those that can't be found on the stove will be here. Do you remember? Unexpectedly, Wet Nurse Ren was counting with her fingers at this time. 1, 2, 3. 30. God, it's your first time talking to me and you can say more than 30 words in one sentence. Can I drink 3 bottles of beer tonight to celebrate? Under Boss Luo's gaze, Nanny Ren moved to the kitchen door like a caterpillar. He closed the door casually. Lizzie, who was watching TV, burst into laughter at this time. She said that the variety show artists were very funny, so Nanny Ren grabbed a newly bought lantern fruit and threw it over. Lizzie's skills were superb. She caught it with her mouth and said with a smile, Give me another one. Go away. Ren Xiling grabbed a handful and threw out 5 or 6. Unexpectedly, Lizzie caught all of them and Ren Xiling was defeated. Are you a clown invited by the circus? Nanny Ren sat on the sofa weakly. Lizzie returned a lantern fruit and fed it to Ren Xiling's mouth with a smile. Ren Xiling rolled her eyes. She probably wouldn't be bored when Luoqiu was not here. She stroked her hair and looked at Luoqiu's vague figure at the kitchen door subconsciously and smiled. She was a little reluctant to leave. Luoqiu's cooking skills were naturally not as good as Miss Maid's, but he was much better than Nanny Ren. After 10 minutes, the 3 of them sat at the table. Lizzie didn't come here often, but every time she came, she could eat half of the rice cooker. She almost licked the plate. This time was still the same. Luoqiu, can I be your mistress? I'm very easy to raise. As long as you promise me 3 meals a day, I don't care about the status. Luoqiu smiled and didn't say anything. Lizzie was defeated. Ren Xiling said angrily, You don't mind, but I do. Remember, you have to solve your own 3 meals a day. How can you do this? Lizzie protested. Ren Xiling pretended not to see it and then picked up the cup next to her. Of course, it was not enough for 3 bottles. Luaccio just poured a cup and didn't fill it. How hateful! By the way, when I went to do the interview today, do you know who I saw? Renziling suddenly looked at Luaccio and said with a trace of beer foam at the corner of her mouth. Luaccio pushed the tissue box over. Who did you meet? Song Ing. Renziling said with her eyes wide open. You really scared me. This classmate of yours has quite the background. You went to do an interview with her? Luaccio thought. Yes, her company wants to do public relations. Almost all the famous media were called. Renziling wanted to wipe the foam on her lips with the back of her hand, but she still used the tissue. What did she say to you? Mammy Ren suddenly narrowed her eyes. Give me another bottle, and I'll tell you. Boss Luo stood up and said to Lizzie, I'm full. Take your time. Just leave the bowls and chopsticks. I'll wash them later. Mammy Ren opened her mouth but couldn't say anything. Luaccio had already returned to the room, as straightforward as always. Lizzie laughed. She was a little bit looking forward to the next days, even though it might not be a long time. Genius remembered the address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 1268. In fact, Lizzie had already stayed there that night. Renziling said that it was just a matter of time and she had to get used to it. It was better to get used to it as soon as possible. Soon after dinner, she received a message from Nan Xiaonan. She knew that Nan Xiaonan had to leave for a period of time. It was a pity that she couldn't accept her invitation. Lizzie stayed in the guest room that had been cleaned up before and given to Nan Xiaonan for 2 days. She was a monster, so she was naturally very sensitive to the aura of heaven and earth. Because of Nan Xiaonan's example, the warm jade placed under Nanny Ren's mattress didn't attract any attention this time. No one would notice it in the future, unless Nanny Ren, who was in the last stage of laziness, remembered to clean the bottom of the mattress. After this night, there were only 3 days left before Luaccio announced to the public that he would go abroad. He still didn't intend to open the door and take the initiative to do business. Since he was a child, Luaccio was more inclined to plan actions. In these few days, he planned to plan the next 1 or 2 years. The game God King was about to log in to other subworlds, which meant that he was likely to not have to worry about too many things soon, for a whole year. Around this time last year, he became the boss of the club. Now, a whole year had passed and he had been used to this kind of life. This year was unusually long for him. Luaccio recalled the customers who had traded with him. One story after another flowed through his heart and turned into a little warmth. It was like warm spring water gradually washing the mountain stream in the cold winter. He knew that he didn't fail in the struggle of emotional deprivation for a whole year. But he always hid the stage where his rationality was magnified and his emotion was suppressed. It's almost time for me to try all kinds of strong emotions by myself. In front of the desk, Luaccio slowly wrote down the 2 extremes of the strongest human emotions: love and hate. He couldn't hate a person. Zhou Yuxing's matter had been dealt with. For him, there was no reason to hate. At present, there was nothing in this world that could make him hate. Then all that's left is love. Luaccio was silent for a moment. He erased the word hate from the white paper and slowly filled in the category of love. He wrote it down stroke by stroke. The last part of the text read, "Love the world, love life, love all the people who love me." After the words were written, they jumped out from the paper. His heart skipped a beat, and he flipped through the contents of the star creation technique that Nan Xiaonan had written. He did not really need to study it because he already knew all the normal rules and changes of the star creation technique. This was a temporary state that he bought back temporarily, which was equivalent to giving himself a buff. He didn't need a long time. He just needed to be able to use the star creation technique at this time. The star creation marks that corresponded to these words appeared out of thin air and finally merged with these words. Thus, they possessed another kind of life. Luaccio thought for a while, and took out a string of prayer beads from the drawer. This was a gift from Sister Ollie on the cruise ship during the Golden Week last year. The words jumped into the prayer beads one by one and finally disappeared. Luocio put the prayer beads on again. This was the warning he gave himself. After the buff was removed, he could only know the star creation technique, but not use it again. Luocio smiled and turned off the table lamp. Outside the room, Renziling and Lizzie seemed to have not slept yet. They were whispering something. In the silence, Luocio slept with his clothes on. His thoughts were like ripples, slowly rippling to listen to the sound of everything. In the living room, Lizzie, who was chatting with Nanny Wren, suddenly sat up and killed a mosquito that flew in front of her with a snap. The sound of clapping hands startled the sleepy Nanny Wren and gave her a sideways glance. Lizzie blinked and smiled. "Sister Wren, do you suddenly feel very comfortable and happy?" "I feel very sleepy," Renziling said grumpily. "Why do I have to accompany you to watch the food program in the middle of the night? If you want to read the newspaper, go to the company's group." Hee. She spoke softly, as if she was being held gently by someone who treated her as something precious. In the same night, when the terrifying screams that were weakened by the space stopped, two strong men endured the discomfort and walked into the room. They dragged out the two badly mutilated corpses. After that, someone sent two panic-stricken and struggling sloppy vagrants into the room, while outside, Ching Yun was recording the number of dead experimental subjects with his scalp tingling. Ching Yun was not the only one who had the same feeling. There were also several civilian experts and Master Huang's disciple, Chen Er. Chen Er seldom did evil things, but it didn't mean that he didn't do them. In the early years, he followed Master Huang around Southeast Asia for a period of time. In fact, Master Huang started his business in Hong Kong. At that time, many rich people and gangsters liked to ask Huang Chifa for fortune-telling and even black magic. Huang Chifa's black magic was not passed down from his sect, but he had learned it in Nanyang when he was traveling abroad. Chen Er had seen his master use black magic several times, and felt that it was the most vicious thing in the world, but it seemed not as terrible as what happened in the sealed room in front of him. But if 24 inside could succeed, then, not only him, but all the people here might have a chance to have real power. Chen Er only learned a little about feng shui, but he had been greatly benefited by it. Therefore, he naturally longed for the more powerful power. Everyone longed for power, no matter it was the superpower of wealth or the real power of transcendence. Most of those who were recruited by Zhong Luochen wanted to be on the same side as Chen Er, otherwise, no one wanted to get involved in this kind of immoral thing. How many are left? In this environment filled with screams from time to time, Zhong Luochen, who was calmer than everyone else, suddenly asked Qing Yun. "Second young master, there are 8 left." Qing Yun swallowed his saliva. According to this pace, Master 24 should be able to do another 4 experiments. If it still fails, we have to wait for a few more days to get some new goods. Zhong Luochen's finger tapped on the table, then he nodded and stood up. "You stay here and watch the experiment, I'll go check on the children." The children mentioned by Zhong Luochen were naturally the children who were discovered by the Superpower Research Lab before he met 24, who were born with micro-ability. He wouldn't choose to put all his eggs in the same basket, sharing the risk. This was something that the children of aristocratic families had to learn from the beginning. 24's experiment and the research lab's research had been carried out at the same time. However, 24 was very interested in these children with micro-ability, and more than once proposed to use these children for experiments. Naturally, Zhong Luochen had been suppressing it. "Second young master, don't worry, once there is news, I'll inform you at the first time." Zhong Luochen nodded casually, quickly walked out of this area and stepped into another part of the lab. Qing Yun covered his ears with both hands, hiding far away from 24's experiment room. This location was actually closer to the room used for those homeless people. Qing Yun looked in from the corner of the curtain, seeing the rest of the homeless people, at this time, were restlessly walking around in the room. These people might be born with mental disabilities, or have become delirious after years of wandering, or even numb, but it seemed that their natural instinct for danger was still there, so they subconsciously knew fear. Only a bald young man, who didn't even have eyebrows, sat motionlessly, watching the movements of the people in the room. Qing Yun didn't feel the slightest fear from this bald young man, couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. He suddenly had some kind of interest, wanting to see how long this bald young man could remain indifferent, so he decided to arrange him to be the last one to carry out the experiment. It was too depressing here. The cruelty began to breed unconsciously. Listening to the screams, Qing Yun's eyes gradually became cruel. Compared to 24's purgatory-like place, the other side of the superpower lab was very peaceful. This side used a gentler method. The rooms were designed in pure white. Those children who were discovered with micro-ability were also wearing white clothes, shoes and socks. They were placed in different rooms with different decorations. There were rooms with ocean decorations as the theme park as the theme, and cartoon as the theme. This was to appease the children's uneasiness. In each room, there were 2 specialized researchers, assisting the children in the training and development of their abilities. In fact, these researchers didn't have the slightest experience in studying superpower. They only had rich knowledge of physics, chemistry and other applied sciences, at least, for the second young master of the Zhong family who had zero foundation, he could only develop in this direction. In addition to the counselors in each room, there was also a researcher assigned outside the room, recording the children's performance throughout the whole process. Zhong Luochen vaguely felt that this was the right research direction. But the progress of this research was too slow, so slow that these children with micro-ability didn't have any progress until now. They were still the same as when they were discovered. Not knowing when it started, the second young master of the Zhong family had an urgent feeling in his heart. He already knew about that world, lingering outside, and could already see it, but he couldn't really step into it. That was why he compromised with 24. He asked Qing Yun whether he liked Wei Xiaobao or He Shun. In fact, the question was similar to asking himself. The answer was the same. He didn't intend to give up on these 2 research directions. At this time, a researcher quickly walked to the side of the second young master of the Zhong family. He brought a new surprise for Zhong Luochen. "We found a new child with ability." This indeed gave Zhong Luochen a new surprise. There should be many kinds of micro-ability, and it might not be possible to classify them, so it was always good to have more samples and data. "Take me to see, what ability is it this time?" The researcher said excitedly. "I think it should be called the ability of animal transformation. The child we found can freely switch between the characteristics of a pig and a normal person." "Animal?" Zhong Luochen was stunned. But he was quite interested in the ability of transformation, but it was a pity that he could only turn into a pig. His good mood suddenly dropped a bit. But it didn't hurt to have a look. After he adjusted his somewhat irritated mood after leaving 24, accompanied by the researcher, he came to the room where the newly found child was placed. Just as the researcher said, Zhong Luochen saw a 4 or 5-year-old child through the observation glass. At this time, he had a pig head that seemed to be incomplete and was looking around anxiously. In fact, not only his head, but also his 4 limbs were similar to those of a pig, but he was wearing children's clothes. "How did you find this child?" Zhong Luochen frowned. The child was wearing children's clothes. It seemed that he had a family. Maybe his family also knew about this child. The researcher said, "It's like this, among our children, there is one who can communicate with insects for a short time. We wanted to take him outside to get close to nature, to see if we could stimulate his potential. Later, we found this child in the forest park used for the experiment. At that time, he was digging carrots in the plantation in the park to eat. No one else. No one else." The researcher said carefully, "We did it after we confirmed it, and no one saw it. Zhong Luochen shook his head. Most of the children he found before were adopted from the orphanage, or rescued from human traffickers. To directly bring them back, forget it. Compared with those homeless people, there was no difference. Zhong Luochen didn't intend to double standards. Since his subordinates did it, he would do it. Have you asked him about his situation? His family? He just needed to think about how to deal with it later. I did. He said that his name is Zhu Hezi or something. At this time, Zhu Zi in the room suddenly shook the bell-like necklace on his neck crazily. Sister Blackwater didn't come back very late tonight, at least no one in the family was hungry. As the eldest sister, the little rabbit monster dutifully prepared dinner for her brothers and sisters. After dinner, she began to coax some of the cubs to sleep. Sister Blackwater didn't come back until it was late at night, and she brought back a little bird. Sister Blackwater, is this? Blackwater held the little bird carefully, smiling lovingly. I found it by accident. Part of its intelligence has just been opened, and it will turn into a monster in the future. I have to look after it, so I came back late. Many cubs had fallen asleep. The little rabbit didn't dare to speak loudly, but she couldn't hide her joy. She said happily, "Great, we have a new child. By the way, where is Zhu Zi?" Blackwater rubbed the little rabbit's head and asked casually. Usually, Zhu Zi would come to her first when she came back, looking for food. No matter whether he had dinner or not, he was always hungry. I picked some fruits on my way back, they tasted good. Blackwater said with a smile. Speaking of which, where is Zhu Zi? The little rabbit noticed something. No wonder I feel it's so quiet today. I haven't seen this glutton since this morning. He must have slipped out to look for food. This kid. Blackwater shakes her head. Apart from blaming them, she smiles. Her tolerance to these kids could actually be described as a kind mother who spoiled her son more often than not. The sound of a bell ringing suddenly rang in her ears. Blackwater's face changed slightly, and then her straight hair scattered messily. Suddenly, a fierce monster power broke out. Sister? Zhu Zi is in danger. Blackwater took a breath, and the violent monster power was suppressed. But her voice was much colder. She ordered, "You stay here and look after the house. I'll be back soon." Genius remembered the address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 1269. In front of the observation room, Zhong Luochen frowned. Why does the child keep shaking the bell on his neck? The observation room was equipped with a single-sided glass, so the situation outside could not be seen from the inside. The researcher subconsciously pushed up his glasses and said, "Maybe it's a sign of uneasiness." Although the child is only a few years old, his strength is no less than an adult's. We spent a lot of effort to catch him and even used anesthetic. However, we don't dare to get close to him now because he will bite. One of us was bitten by him, but he's fine after bandaging. However, we don't dare to go in for the time being unless we continue to give him anesthetic. Zhong Luochen thought for a while. Calm him down first and ask about his family's situation. Especially his family situation, we must find out as soon as possible. This is the most important thing. When they were talking, the little piglet in the observation room was so frightened that he was about to cry. The frequency of shaking the bell became faster and faster. This bell was given to him by Sister Ink. Not only him, but the other siblings in the family also had one. This was to prevent the cubs from sending out a message when they were in danger. The bell was just a simple bell, but it hid the scales that Blackwater pulled out from her body. "Sister, come quickly. I'm so hungry. Everyone here is bad. They won't give me anything to eat." Woo woo, the cries of the little piglet in the observation room were directly transmitted. Zhong Luochen and the researcher listened carefully. The second young master of the Zhong family suddenly said, "He really has a family. Why is he shaking this bell?" "What can a bell do?" the researcher asked subconsciously. Zhong Luochen suddenly had a bad feeling. He did not know where the premonition came from, but it was getting stronger. Go and find some food. Calm the child first. Then find a way to take out his bell. I have a feeling that this bell is not simple. Okay. The researcher nodded and walked out quickly. There was no shortage of food here, especially food that children like to eat. After all, they believed that keeping the children happy while they were conducting research would help them grow better. These children were more or less orphans, and they were not from the orphanage. Their lives in the past could not be considered good, but now they were well taken care of here, except for some restrictions on their freedom. The children did not mind, and gradually built a relationship with the researchers here. However, for some reason, the uneasy feeling in Zhong Luoqin's heart grew stronger and stronger. Last two, Qing Yun looked at the two bloody corpses that were dragged out and shook his head. This time, 24 personally dragged them out. He had already tested more than a dozen bodies, and was planning to come out to drink some water and take a rest. At this moment, Qing Yun set his eyes on the last two test subjects. Among them, there was a bald young man whom Qing Yun specially saved for the end. Qing Yun looked at him carefully and found that this bald young man had a westernized face. This guy looks like an idiot, but his body is so healthy. When the bald youth was brought out, the big man who escorted him frowned and said, "Assistant Qing, this guy doesn't look like an ordinary person. Look at his muscles. Generally speaking, without long-term and scientific training, it's impossible to reach this level. It's like the golden ratio." Of course, Qing Yun did not know about training or body proportions. Although he did not know, it did not mean that he would pretend to know. Qing Yun was very clear about his own ability. Of course, he was the best at flattery, but his other talents were ordinary. However, he had one advantage, that was, he could listen to the professional's words. "Will there be trouble?" Qing Yun frowned and asked. The man said, "It's hard to say, but ordinary people would not exercise like this. No, it should be said that he trained his body to reach this state. But I don't know why he became an idiot." "Well," Qing Yun paced, "let's detain him first. I will ask him how he found this place." When the man was about to nod, 24, who just came back from drinking water, suddenly walked over with a gloomy face. Everyone had already experienced 24's cruelty and horror. At this moment, seeing 24 walking over, the robust man who was detaining the bald young man stepped back subconsciously. 24 Master. Master? Qing Yun mustered up his courage and called out. 24 stretched out his hand and pinched the bald youth's arm, then his body, as if he was checking something. Suddenly, he cracked open his mouth and revealed a strange smile. "Isn't there a good material here? Wouldn't it have been better if you had taken it out earlier? Why waste so much of my energy with that trash?" Qing Yun gave a start. "Master, you mean this guy will succeed?" 24 said, "At least 10 times more successful than those trash." Qing Yun immediately gritted his teeth, saying in a low voice, "What are you waiting for? Send this guy to the master's room." After a short while, the bald youth was thrown into the room, and 24 followed him with a smile. As for the homeless man who was originally in the same group as the bald youth, no one paid any attention to him, and he was once again locked in his original room. "Assistant Qing, this. What if this bald young man has some background?" It was the one who noticed the bald young man was not ordinary at the beginning. At this moment, he reminded Qing Yun in a low voice. Qing Yun waved his hand. "If he succeeds, it won't be a problem. If he succeeds, no matter what kind of trouble, young master will be able to suppress it, right?" This person nodded in agreement. Knowing the huge power behind the Zhong family, of course he wouldn't doubt this sentence. 24 didn't care what outsiders thought. At this moment, he was sizing up the bald young man who was standing there in a daze. 24 walked to the front of the young man. "Well, the people on the internet said that bald people are very strong. Is it true? You've become stronger because you've become bald?" Idiot 24. Idiot 24. That's a manga. Idiot 24. 24 grabbed the crow on his shoulder and threw it out. This time, it wasn't thrown to the wall, but directly to the bald young man's body. The crow instantly turned into a dark shadow, wrapping the bald young man like a black cocoon. 24 said slowly, "This should be able to bear my consciousness, transform the soul?" Why would he do this kind of thing for Zhong Luochen? Although he was an immortal-level conjurer, but when it came to matters related to the soul, it wasn't something that he could completely understand. It wasn't that he couldn't do it, but the cost and the result was only to allow the individual to use the conjurer, which was simply unequal. 24 just wanted to change a better body for himself. He was involved in this subworld, and time was really too short. The body that his consciousness was attached to was really very poor. Of course, as a cursemancer, he didn't care too much about his body. However, he had been punched several times by a guy with terrifying strength. His bones were almost broken. Moreover, there was a strange energy that stayed in his body. Instead of wasting time to expel this strange energy and then heal his injuries, it was better to directly change his body to a new one. It would be faster. It was just that it wasn't easy to find a new body that was compatible with him. At least, those dead vagrants in front of him didn't have a compatible body that satisfied him. The shadow that the crow turned into was currently analyzing the bald young man's body little by little. 24's dim eyes were getting brighter and brighter. "I actually found a treasure. The potential of this body is actually..." He didn't care much about the problem of the body as long as it was compatible with his soul, so that he could use the conjurer smoothly. However, if the new body's potential was high, he would naturally be happy to see it. At least when he was fighting with the warrior, he wouldn't spit out a few mouthfuls of blood after a punch, right? The crow's voice suddenly rang. Idiot 24, deconstruction complete. 24 was more and more satisfied. This is really amazing. This body actually only has a simple consciousness, and doesn't even have a soul. It's simply born to be a vessel. He revealed a sinister smile, and his body walked into the black cocoon, merging into it little by little. The ship had completely left the dock. At this time, only a faint light could be seen in the city. It's only been a while, and you're already reluctant to part with it. In the sea breeze, Tang Tianlin held a bottle of red wine in his left hand and 2 wine glasses upside down in his right hand. He came to Nan Xiaonan, who was enjoying the breeze on the deck, and smiled. "Take a break. Red wine contained less sugar." She looked at the red wine, thinking about the problem of calories. In fact, she was more inclined towards drinks like cola. She heard that cola had a unique name, Happy Water? "No, I don't drink," she said indifferently. Not only sugar, alcohol would also affect the brain's activity, and it was not convenient for her to speed up her thinking. Tang Tianlin didn't mind. In his memory, Nan Xiaonan was indeed a person who almost didn't touch alcohol. "All right, I have something to ask you." She ran her fingers through her loose hair in the sea breeze. "That night, other than House, you also took the clone away, right? How did you deal with the clone, or has he been disposed of?" Tang Tianlin said, "I don't know, he's missing." "Missing?" She analyzed the authenticity of this statement. Tang Tianlin said, "That day when I came out from the secret tunnel, I actually hid the test subject in the rockery behind the exit. I planned to retrieve it after everything was over. But when I went back later, he was gone, and I couldn't find him." "He left on his own?" "Maybe," Tang Tianlin said with uncertainty. "This guy seems to have a bit of his own consciousness." She recalled that when the cultivation chamber exploded, the clone moved on its own. "Should be." She looked at Tang Tianlin and said coldly, "You seem to be more concerned about whether the clone can be found than whether it can be found." "Why?" Tang Tianlin said slowly, "How do we distinguish a person from a person? A person who can be recognized by morality, a living person who can be defined?" He also looked at the city that was fading away. "Soul?" What is that? I can't see it or touch it, but as long as it has consciousness, it will naturally know how to think. Isn't the essence of a human being because he knows how to think? If he leaves on his own, if he can live a good life in the future, doesn't it prove that he is already a real person? She said with a smile, because we are in the same boat. You are also a Hausen clone. Tang Tianlin didn't say anything. He just smiled lightly, raised his glass and said softly, "A toast to life." The wind started to blow. Suddenly, a strong sea breeze blew toward the city. A toast to the morning sun, a toast to the moonlight. Bu Bugao's tone-deaf voice buzzed in Wang Hu's ears like a fly. As long as the headphones were removed, it would be another style. Well, let's call it singing for the time being? Wang Hu resisted the urge to punch Bu Bugao and moved away from Bu Bugao. Since receiving the task of monitoring the situation in the building, the computer room on the roof of another building opposite the building had become a temporary stronghold for him and Bu Bugao. I want to fight with that woman again. Such an idea suddenly popped up in Wang Hu's mind. That powerful woman on the roof of the pet hospital. Suddenly, Wang Hu's pores opened in an instant, and the hair on the surface of his body stood up automatically. He stood up abruptly. He stood up straight. He jumped off Bu Bugao. What's wrong with you again? Bu Bugao took off his headphones. Wang Hu walked out of the computer room, ignoring Bu Bugao. He ran directly to the rooftop and stared at the night sky. Bu Bugao was the best at the back. With a sullen face, he followed Wang Hu and looked at the night sky. The night seemed to be pressing down, and the moon was covered by a dark cloud. It seemed to have darkened directly, and there was a strong wind blowing, and Bu Bugao trembled subconsciously. Is it going to rain? It's the demon aura. Wang Hu's eyes lit up. The powerful demon aura is coming. Above the building, a dark cloud visible to the naked eye appeared out of nowhere. It was a rotating dark cloud. It was supposed to be late at night, but to be able to see dark clouds was a very unusual thing. The security guard at the entrance of the building looked up in surprise. He found that the cloud seemed to be dark red, like a demon cloud. The security guard couldn't help but take out his phone, intending to take a picture of this scene. At this moment, the sound of footsteps entered his ears. It was the clear sound of high heels on the concrete road. He looked in the direction of the sound, and in the dark night, he saw a woman walking slowly, black clothes, black skirt, black lips, cold eyes. The security guard was stunned. This woman was extremely beautiful, but he suddenly shivered. The moment his body shivered, the woman appeared in front of him in a flash, as if ignoring space. You! Before he could speak, his neck was directly grabbed by this beautiful and terrifying woman and lifted up. You, where did you take my piggy to? Speak! The woman's hair moved with the slight breeze and scattered. The demon cloud in the sky turned completely dark red in an instant. Old Tai set a small goal. First carat. Remember New Year's Eve Chinese Network. Chapter 1270. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly there was the sound of thunder. It was muffled thunder. Lu Mingho, who was writing a report in the office, was startled. He walked out of the window and looked up at the strange sky. His face changed instantly. The door was pushed open with a bang, and Wei Zidao walked in quickly. His face was grim. He was holding a small instrument in his hand, and the indicator light on the instrument was flashing red. Brother Hao, look! The demon aura measuring instrument is 100 times more than the normal one. What happened? Lu Mingho shook his head, subconsciously looking at the cup on the desk. The half-full glass of water seemed to have been shaken, and the clear water began to move violently, causing countless small splashes. The phone rang. It was Bu Bugao. Wei Zidao took it in a hurry, then his face changed slightly. Brother Hao, there's a monster approaching the building of Zhong Luochen's company. I'm afraid it's at least a big monster. Lu Mingho's pupils suddenly opened. His next reaction was, Go! Let's go and see. What? I don't know. The security guard who was lifted up by the neck was struggling in pain. His voice was intermittent. Black water snorted coldly and threw the man away. The security guard's body was suddenly thrown into the security booth, smashing it into smithereens. His head was bleeding, and he fainted. At this moment, the thick demonic clouds in the sky covered the sky and pressed down, as if the demonic clouds were pressing down on the city. Blackwater's eyes became colder and colder. She walked directly to the entrance of the building. The glass door at the entrance of the lobby exploded before she arrived. The entire building was more than 30 stories high. Almost all the windows were shattered at this moment. Countless pieces of glass scattered like stardust. The good news was that it was already late at night. The normal employees had already left early. The bad news was that several security guards who were patrolling the building were so scared that they couldn't stop trembling. Some of them even fell from the corridor. Boom, boom, boom. The building shook slightly like an earthquake, and this shock was directly transmitted to the research institute in the negative floor of the building. What happened? Earthquake? Qing Yun looked at the dust falling from the ceiling and felt the vibration from the floor. Will there be an earthquake here? No one could answer. They just subconsciously looked at the room where 24 was doing his experiment. 24 had been in there for some time, much longer than any of the previous experiments he had done. Is it because of the great master? Qing Yun frowned and then relaxed. He looked happy. Are we going to succeed this time? Everyone was pleasantly surprised. Only Chen Er was frowning. A sense of uneasiness spread through his heart, and his mood suddenly became uneasy. He quickly pinched his fingers and began to calculate. It was just that he was not proficient in the art. He had only learned the surface of the finger divination along the way. He could not calculate what was going on, but the feeling of uneasiness in his heart grew stronger and stronger. His heart was beating rapidly, and Chen Er was already in a state of trembling. He decisively bit his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. He stuck the blood on his finger and smeared it on his eyelids. Chen Er opened his eyes again and looked at the people present. At this time, the people present were all covered with dark clouds, which was the sign of death. He was shocked and shouted without hesitation, "Let's go! There is danger here. You are all in danger." Master Chen? Qing Yun was stunned. He was in awe and fear of 24, but he was very respectful to Chen Er. After all, Chen Er had helped him set up a lot of peach blossom arrays, which indeed allowed him to live a very romantic life. I can't explain so much. You are all in big trouble. If you don't want to die, listen to me and leave here immediately. Chen Er said and directly rushed to the exit without explaining anything. What's wrong with him? A martial arts master frowned. Crazy. These martial arts masters were not as afraid of Chen Er as they were of 24. They only thought Chen Er was a Jianghu charlatan. They didn't know whether he had real skills or not. At most, his 12 moves of Tan Tue were not bad, but most of them were disdainful of him. I will go and have a look. Qing Yun suddenly said, Masters, please stay here and take care of him. After all, Qing Yun still thought that Chen Er's peach blossom arrays were good. At this time, he wanted to check on Chen Er's situation, so he quickly walked out. The remaining martial arts masters shrugged. They didn't care about Chen Er's crazy behavior. Perhaps he was just scared out of his wits by the sudden vibration. Chen Er was scared, but they weren't. The bigger the vibration, the higher the possibility of success. Inside, there was the power that they dreamed of. But at this time, countless cracks appeared on the ceiling above their heads. In just a breath, the ceiling directly broke down, and a figure directly fell from the crack. Almost at the same time, the black cocoon in the room quietly sank into the floor little by little. Finally, it completely sank into the ground. Cement blocks mixed with steel bars smashed this floor beyond recognition. Many employees working for the research institute were buried in these stones. After all, these martial artists had trained their bodies for many years, so their resistance was very good. At this time, they pushed away the heavy objects on their bodies, patting the dust and climbing up. At present, the lights were dim, and only the emergency lights were on. In the red light, they saw a strange woman in a black dress with black hair, looking around with sharp eyes. Just a glance. With just a glance, several martial artists were greatly shocked. They thought that this was bad. This person had a terrifying background. Not here, but he's in. They heard this strange woman whispering something. They responded cautiously, not intending to fight with this terrifying woman unless it was absolutely necessary. So someone stood out, asking tentatively, "This, lady, what do you want to do?" The strange woman. Blackwater glanced at her casually. She had already sensed the breath of Zhu Heezy, but at the same time, a strong smell of blood rushed into her nose. This was not the smell of blood that came from the wounds of those who were crushed under the rubble when she came down, but a stronger smell. She frowned and found the source of the smell. It was from several big wooden boxes piled up in the corner. Blackwater waved her hand, and those wooden boxes were instantly broken open. More than 10 badly mutilated corpses slid out. The brutality of the corpses made Blackwater, an authentic monster, feel disgusted. "What are these for?" Blackwater shouted coldly. The martial artists were in a trance under the horrible monster aura of Blackwater. At this time, they were startled by her sudden shout. One of them answered subconsciously, "For experiments," but as soon as he said it, he regretted it very much in his heart. "Experiments? Zhu Heezy, no." Blackwater's face slightly changed. When she looked at these martial artists again, her eyes were full of killing intent. She slightly opened her 5 fingers, and her fingernails grew a little longer. Her figure flashed in front of them like a ghost. After flashing, a drop of blood fell from Blackwater's fingernails. She snorted, "Bastards." The martial artists slowly turned their bodies, but the moment they turned, their carotid arteries on their necks burst open instantly, and blood burst out. They widened their eyes, and before they could cover the wound, they fell to the ground in horror and died. Blackwater was anxious about Zhu Heezy's safety. She did not check carefully here, but followed Zhu Heezy's monster aura and moved quickly. As soon as she left, 2 more figures arrived in the next moment. Seeing the corpses all over the ground and the wounded, Bubugao's face changed dramatically. Wang Hu's eyes lit up and he waved his arm. It went in this direction. Bubugao's mind turned quickly and he said directly, "Wang Hu, you go after it. You must stop it and don't kill humans. I'll save the wounded here and wait for the seniors to come." Wang Hu nodded right away, and his body directly shot out. Bubugao looked at the tragic situation here with trepidation, and then saw the horrifying corpse in the corner. He suddenly shuddered. "Damn it, did I break into the Japanese's laboratory? What did the second young master of the Zhong family do?" His heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, he picked up some scattered documents from the ground and looked at them. The alarm beeped crazily. The vibration of the building was also transmitted to the other side of the research institute. The sudden alarm made the group of people who were dealing with Zhu Heezy stop. As for the rest of the children, they were already asleep, but the sudden change at this time also startled them, and they came out of their respective rooms in a daze. "What happened?" Zhong Luochen looked around with a sullen face, but at this time, in the observation room, Zhu Heezy, who had quieted down after the food was delivered, suddenly began to shake the bell again. The sound of the bell made Zhong Luochen inexplicably annoyed. He said with a rare irritation, "Don't let him shake it! Take the bell away from me!" Several researchers panicked, and they were completely in a state of obeying orders. Hearing this, they all stretched out their hands to grab Zhu Heezy, wanting to take away its bell. Zhu Heezy was just a cub, but its strength was not inferior to a healthy adult, and its body was short, so the researchers couldn't hold it down for a while. The research area here was basically separated from each other so that it would be quieter during research. However, at this time, it was a mess outside. 6 or 7 children who were discovered to have micro-abilities, as well as dozens of researchers, and more than 10 guards who stayed behind to guard the area. It was a mess outside. Zhong Luochen picked up the phone and frowned, calling Qing Yun. The moment the number was dialed, he heard footsteps behind him. Tap, 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 tap. Zhong Luochen shuddered and turned around instantly, but the moment he saw the person, the phone slipped from his hand and fell to the ground. Miss Mo? The Miss Mo in front of him was completely different from the one in Zhong Luochen's memory. The woman in the pottery studio was quiet and natural, as if she was an aloof flower. She was the most unique woman Zhong Luochen had ever seen in his life. Even the second young master of the Zhong family, who didn't like women, had a feeling of yearning for her. He couldn't forget her, but he had never thought that he would meet her under such circumstances. Miss Mo, why are you here? But Zhong Luochen soon felt that Mo Shui was different from the one he knew. Her eyes, her appearance, such a bewitching black lips. Blackwater didn't look at Zhong Luochen, nor did she care about his question. She just looked at the observation room, and the killing intent in her eyes grew stronger. In the observation room, Zhu Hizi was pressed to the ground by several researchers. Some grabbed its neck, some pressed its limbs, and it opened its mouth to bite a researcher's arm. It was completely twisted in Blackwater's view. Zhu Hizi was being bullied by several humans. Sister, save me! Woo-woo, Blackwater coldly snorted, and the glass wall of the observation room suddenly exploded. The researchers were shocked, and their arms loosened. Little Piglet nimbly broke free and jumped into Blackwater's arms, crying loudly, "Sister! They bullied me! They didn't give me food! They even hit me! Sister, I'm so scared, Zhu Hizi is so scared, I want to go home! Whoa! You're his sister!" Zhong Luochen blurted out. Blackwater glanced at Zhong Luochen coldly. Then, her gaze softened. She looked at Zhu Suizi and said softly, "It's okay. We'll go back soon. Don't cry, okay? They bullied me. They even gave me injections. Zhu Hizi is afraid of injections the most. Sister will punish them, don't cry, good boy." Blackwater touched Zhu Hizi's head gently and comforted him. She slowly sighed and looked up at Zhong Luochen again. The second young master's heart suddenly jumped. "This is your place?" Blackwater asked suddenly. Zhong Luochen's mind turned quickly, but he calmed down quickly. He took a deep breath and said seriously, "Miss Mo, this is indeed my place, but there must be some misunderstanding. I didn't know this child is yours." But he stopped talking instantly. At this moment, Zhong Luochen's eyes widened. His eyes were filled with fear, panic, disbelief, and a little pain. He felt the pain that stung every nerve ending in his body, spreading from his chest in an instant. Miss Mo's arm pierced through his chest without any hesitation. Clean and neat, without any hesitation. Why? No reason. Blackwater looked at him coldly. "As long as this is your place, I'll kill anyone who hurts my child." She pulled her arm out of Zhong Luochen's chest and waved it. The blood stains on her arm instantly disappeared, as if she was disgusted. Zhong Luochen's eyes began to dim and his vision gradually blurred. He simply fell to the ground in a pool of blood. His consciousness gradually faded away. Everything seemed to have returned to the beginning. Before the complete darkness, he saw the clown boss with a mask. He and the boss had a conversation before the dark table. "Then what are you going to keep? Although there are many things that can bring happiness, they can be summed up into a few: love, family, interests, achievements, and peace of mind. Keep the achievements for me. Are you sure? Maybe the better choice will be at the end. I believe in my feelings, it's useless to say more." Darkness. Chapter 1271. Bang! In the blink of an eye, the wall broke open at a certain point, and then a large area of the wall collapsed as a whole. Wang Hu stepped in through the hole. This was the most direct way to travel, and he barged in recklessly. Black Water just withdrew her hand that pierced through Zhong Luoqin's chest. Wang Hu happened to see this scene. He just casually glanced at Zhong Luoqin, who was lying in a pool of blood. Wang Hu didn't know this human, so he had no interest in him. He didn't care whether Zhong Luoqin was alive or dead. Therefore, to Wang Hu, there was no such thing as being one step behind. Black Water's expression was still cold. She took away a human's life. Yes, it was just a human. For her, Zhong Luoqin was just a dispensable human. To her, it couldn't be said that she hated humans, but at least she didn't have a good impression of them. Originally, if it wasn't for the endless exploitation by humans, she might still be living peacefully in the primeval forest, and the cubs she adopted wouldn't be homeless. Actually, she had been restraining herself because Shinryu had made a rule. Later, she was driven out of Yang Taizi's Taoist temple and came here. She thought she could live a peaceful life in Shinryu's territory. However, a human actually dared to touch her child, which was tantamount to challenging her fragile bottom line. Along the way, she first saw those brutally murdered corpses, then saw some children who were treated like white mice, and finally heard the cries of pigs. She didn't think she had gone too far, she just killed a mastermind. Black Water didn't intend to kill too many people. At least after the mastermind died, she planned to leave with Zhu Sui. As for how this would end, it was not within her scope of consideration. At worst, she could go somewhere else with her cubs if she couldn't stay here anymore. Kelowna was so big that she could find a place for her and her cubs to live. Even if she had to wander around, she didn't want her cubs to be hurt. But the situation seemed to have changed. For example, the one-armed strong man who broke the wall was different from those so-called martial arts masters. He emitted a pure demon aura, which was very oppressive. "Are you with them?" Black Water held Big Pig in one hand. When he looked at Wang Hu, his eyes contained vigilance. As if stimulated by the Black Water demon aura, a strong fighting spirit surged in Wang Hu's heart at this time. He, who had lost his memory, did not have much of a sense of right and wrong. At present, he was almost in a state where he acted according to his feelings. He shook his head. "I don't know the humans here. I'm just interested in you. Fight with me, and if you win, you can leave." "Are you trying to stall for time?" Black Water frowned. Wang Hu was not good with words. He had probably been like that in the past, and now the habit of using fists to communicate was already deeply ingrained in his bones, as if it was an instinct. At this moment, without saying a word, he flew over and gave a kick. "Why is this guy beating me up just like that?" Black Water was shocked. However, the opponent's speed and pressure made her unable to lower her guard. In the face of Wang Hu's surprise attack, she instantly waved her hand and raised a light shield condensed by demonic power. Bang! The light shield was instantly shattered. Black Water was suddenly horrified. She could only feel a huge wave of demonic energy rushing towards her like a flood. She hurriedly hugged Zhu Lizi and shrunk her body. Her body was sent flying by the force of this attack and violently smashed into the wall. "Elder sister!" Zhu Lizi cried out in horror. Black Water's mouth spilled a trace of blood. She slowly took a breath and adjusted her breathing. At the same time, she put Big Pig down. "You hide, sister will deal with this big guy. It will be done soon." Although she said so, she was more or less not confident in her heart. This one-armed guy, the pressure was getting stronger and stronger. However, Wang Hu did not take advantage of this moment to attack again. He just waited quietly, until Black Water was ready, then he took another step forward. "Are you ready? If you're ready, then go all out. Otherwise, you might die." "A lunatic who only knows how to fight." Black Water snorted coldly. She could be sure that there was no old grudge between her and the opponent. They did not even know each other. This guy did not show any hostility, only the desire to fight. She waved her hand, and a sword appeared out of thin air. The demonic power in her body was also crazily increasing. It was almost at the same level as the pressure brought by Wang Hu at this time. Good! Wang Hu was delighted. The two simply fought like this. The concrete of the underground superpower research room could not even resist the pressure of the terrifying demonic power released by them. Under the huge destructive power of the two, the foundation seemed to be in imminent danger. The vibrations spread all the way, making the whole building become turbulent at this time. The demonic cloud in the sky became bigger and bigger, forming a vortex. Two huge demonic powers were seen rushing straight to the sky. At the moment when this terrifying scene appeared, the two agents of the administration, Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao, who had rushed all the way here, also arrived at the scene. Oh my God! There are at least two monsters at the level of big demons fighting? The two looked up in horror. Outside the building, two shadows were circling the building at this moment. Every time they fought, the aftermath was like a giant hammer that demolished the building, directly smashing part of the building into pieces. Damn it! Is this calculated? Wei Zidao cursed at this time. Consultant Long just left, and they are already causing trouble? One of them seems to be Wang Hu. Lu Mingho was anxious in his heart. Saving people is more important. Bu Bugao said that there are many injured people below. This unknown big demon, let Wang Hu deal with it first. With that, Lu Mingho hurriedly rushed into the building. I must go back and find out the origin of Wang Hu. Wei Zidao gritted his teeth and followed. A big demon-level monster already required more than a few high-level agents to deal with. He and Lu Mingho were only at the beginner level, and the other was at the intermediate level. It was simply another bottle of luck. No one knew what was going on. In an instant, it was like an earthquake. The moment Qing Yun chased out and caught up with Chen Er, it was the moment of this drastic change. No matter if it was him or Chen Er, they were only flesh and blood. Facing the collapsed concrete, they were extremely fragile. But it was unknown whether Qing Yun was not destined to die, or Chen Er really had the ability to seek luck and avoid disaster. In such a collapsed environment, the two of them were not hurt at all. Damn it! This road is also blocked. Chen Er cursed in a low voice. It was another road that was blocked because of the collapse. We are not going to be buried alive here, right, Master Chen? Qing Yun grabbed Chen Er's arm as if he was a lifesaver. He really wanted to get rid of this guy. It was time to run for his life. Is there no other way? Chen Er stared at Qing Yun and asked fiercely, I don't want to wait for death here. Qing Yun panicked and said quickly, there may be another way in the research area on the other side. Then hurry up and lead the way. Chen Er shouted sternly. Qing Yun shuddered and hurriedly ran to the other end of the super passage. After running for a while, Qing Yun suddenly exclaimed in surprise, why is there a hole here? Great, we don't need to take a detour, we can go through directly. It was not just a hole in the wall. There were similar holes in front of each wall. The two of them were pleasantly surprised to find that along the way, the environment gradually became less damaged. Master Chen, you are right. We are indeed in big trouble. Fortunately, I chased you out, or I might be buried alive like them. Qing Yun still had a lingering fear and admired Chen Er even more. He felt that these geomancy guys were the most reliable. When we get out of here, I will definitely thank you. Let's talk about it later. Chen Er answered casually. Qing Yun smiled, but his smile soon froze. At the end of the passage, a figure was lying on the ground with a large amount of blood flowing out. It was Second Young Master. Young Master! Qing Yun screamed in horror, rolling to Zhong Luochen's side. Young Master? Young Master! Wake up! Wake up! Young Master! Chen Er frowned and walked in, but he was upset by Qing Yun's howling. Stop shouting. Second Young Master Zhong is dead. Look at the wound. Does he look like a man who can survive? The bloody hole in the chest was so eye-catching. Qing Yun's hands were trembling, and then he found that his hands were covered with Zhong Luoqin's blood. He was startled. When he looked at Zhong Luoqin again, he found that the second young master's eyes weren't closed. Instead, he was staring at him. Qing Yun screamed and pushed the cold corpse away. What should we do? Young master is dead. What can we do? Chen Er said angrily. Do you want to stay here and be buried with him? Are you going or not? Go. I can't go. Qing Yun trembled and stood up, grabbing Chen Er's arm with both hands. Second young master can't die. He can't die. Master, save him. You must have a way to save him, right? You must have a way, Master Chen. Do you think I'm an immortal? Chen Er swung his arms. Your young master is dead. I can prolong his life, but at least he has to be alive. No, Master Chen, you have to save second young master, you have to save him. Qing Yun's face turned pale. If second young master doesn't come back, we can't live anymore, really? Old master won't let me go, and won't let you go either. Master Chen. The old master loves the second young master the most. He will do anything for him. You see, the second young master obviously wasn't smashed to death. He must have been killed. The old master will definitely know. I said, Zhong Luoqin is dead, he can't be saved. Leave me alone. No. Qing Yun trembled. This is my only bridge. If it is broken, I can't go anywhere. No, you can't go. His expression became ferocious in an instant. His hands desperately pressed down on Chen Er's shoulders, and he actually roared. F***ck. Do you really think you're a big shot? Chen Er kicked Qing Yun's abdomen with his knee, making him bend over and retch painfully. If you want to die, keep it for yourself, humph. Ignoring Qing Yun, Chen Er looked around, trying to find a way out. Qing Yun stared blankly at Zhong Luoqin, who died with his eyes wide open. He sat down on the ground, as if he had lost everything in an instant. Gone. Nothing. Everything is gone. Second young master, I'm sorry, I have to go too. It's not that I don't want to save you, I also want to live. At most, when you become a ghost, I'll burn more things for you. You don't come to me. Chen Er suddenly thought of something, turning around and looking at Qing Yun, who was out of his wits. What did you say? I said I also want to go. I also want to live. Qing Yun trembled. Master Chen, don't leave me. I have money, I really have money, I have saved a lot of money these years. Not this sentence, the last sentence. Don't come to me? The first two sentences. Burn more things for me after I become a ghost? Got it. Chen Er turned around and walked to the side of Zhong Luoqin's corpse. He squatted down and stretched out his fingers to press on Zhong Luoqin's neck. Then, he opened Zhong Luoqin's eyes and looked at his scattered pupils. Master Chen? At this time, Chen Er's eyes lit up and he said, I can't save the person, but I can try to save the ghost. Ghost? Chen Er nodded. Have you heard of raising ghosts? He just died. His 3 souls and 7 spirits should still be there. I can try to summon his soul, then raise his ghost with the method of raising ghosts. Qing Yun was surprised and happy. Then can he return to the living world? Have you watched too many movies? Have you heard that the dead can't be brought back to life? Chen Er snorted. This is yin and yang, the 5 elements, the law of heaven and earth. Even if there is a way to return to the living world, it will be punished by heaven. Do you know about the punishment of heaven? The kind that will turn into charcoal when struck by lightning. Besides, my master didn't teach me that. I can only summon his soul and raise ghosts. How about it? It's up to you. If you don't, I'll find a way out right now. Qing Yun gritted his teeth. Master Chen, you do it. Chen Er nodded. He was also a decisive character. Hearing this, he directly bit his finger and drew a Taoist seal with blood on Zhong Luoqin's forehead. After that, he shouted, You lift his body. There is nothing here. I can't do anything. I have to leave here, go back to my villa. I need to find some props and perform the ritual. The villa that Chen Er inherited from Huang Qifa was not far, only a dozen kilometers away. Qing Yun quickly nodded, swallowing his saliva and carrying Zhong Luoqin's body. Master Qin, this way. I remember there is an emergency passage here. Bang! A black shadow fell from the sky. Like a meteor, it crashed into the building from the top, breaking through 5 or 6 floors in a row before stopping. Black Water spat out a mouthful of blood. Her body was entangled by a few rigid roots. She looked at the broken holes above. Wang, who was standing on the upper floor, looking down. Your technique is too bad. Wang, who shook his head. You have a body full of monster energy, but don't know how to use it. What a waste, I only used less than 30% of your strength. At this moment, Black Water's monster nature was floating, 2 sharp teeth were exposed from her black lips. Her pupils became vertical, and she struggled to stand up. Wang, who stretched out 5 fingers, aiming at Black Water, and suddenly clenched them into a fist. If you don't show me some ability, I might really kill you. Don't let me down. She was about to remember something. His fighting spirit rose higher and higher. Wang, whose heart was filled with ruthlessness. At this moment, it was like a new sprout that was about to break through the soil. He had a feeling that he was about to recall something. As long as the demon in front of him could give him a serious look, as long as it was a satisfying battle. The monster cloud in the sky suddenly vibrated. The huge monster cloud whirlpool was spinning crazily, and an even more powerful and ruthless monster energy rushed to the sky from Black Water. That huge demonic aura burst out like a strong wind, blowing the surrounding sand and stones like bullets, hitting Wang, whose body. He suddenly laughed. Facing the huge demonic aura that was like a monstrous wave, there was a slight change in his body. The royal pattern that represented the white tiger flickered on his forehead. In the center of the monster energy whirlpool, Black Water's vertical pupils turned into golden fragments. Her legs had disappeared, leaving only half of her black snake body. Behind her, the huge monster energy faintly condensed into a bigger shadow. It was also a snake head and a human body. The earth began to shake at this moment. It started from this building and spread to the surroundings. Descendants of Empress Hua. Wang, who whispered to himself. He didn't know what this sentence meant, but he said it subconsciously, as if it was some kind of instinct hidden in his memory. The divine beast white tiger blood in his body seemed to be stimulated at this moment, and it surged crazily. Ha 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 ha! Wang, who looked up to the sky and laughed wildly, looking forward to the next battle. The white tiger beast god transformation in his body was activated automatically, and directly reached the second transformation level. A terrifying monster energy that didn't belong to Black Water's monster energy burst out at this moment. The 2 peerless monster energies, with this as the center, spread the monster cloud in the sky in an instant. The earthquake also escalated at this moment. The 2 fierce monster energies collided crazily at this moment, and the upper floor of the building was instantly crushed into pieces. But their monster energies were still increasing, and they hadn't reached the peak yet. The real collision would happen when both of them increased their monster energies to the limit. Soon. But at this moment, when their monster energies were about to rise to the point where they had no choice but to explode, a chain of cold light directly broke the monster cloud in the sky and shot down instantly. That chain shot out and split into hundreds of chains in an instant, like a curtain of rain. They shot out together, directly ignoring the terrifying demonic power, and wrapped around Wang Hu and Black Water respectively, directly crushing the terrifying demonic power of both of them. In the room, Luoqiu, who slept with his clothes on, slowly opened his eyes and said faintly, "This is the city it wants to protect." Chapter 1272. Around them, hundreds of chains with cold light were flowing. They seemed to have no end or no source, as if they came from the void. Whether it was Black Water or Wang Hu, their limbs were all chained up. Both of them were lifted up as if they were criminals waiting to be executed. Black Water lowered her head, and her vertical golden pupils regained clarity, followed by a sense of weakness. She knew that it was because the demon in her heart was aroused, and she used the power that she shouldn't have used. But she didn't expect that the power she didn't want to use didn't change the current situation at all. Instead, it seemed to be worse. What happened? She believed that she wasn't the only one who was confused. Even that ridiculously powerful one-armed guy was also confused. Wang Hu did have a feeling of swallowing something. He had felt that something was about to wake up in his body, but because of these chains, it was beaten back to its original form. Even so, his strong fighting spirit had disappeared, and now he was the blockhead that Bu Gao was familiar with. The demon clouds in the sky had dispersed. Black Water looked up and saw the night sky with a moon and sparse stars. She tried to move, but the chains around her body didn't shrink the more she struggled. It even began to loosen. The chains began to flow again, and both her and Wang Hu were slowly put down and completely released. A cold wind blew, and Black Water suddenly shivered. She looked around and saw that many buildings outside had collapsed. Not far away there was a collapsed pedestrian bridge, and it fell down and hit a truck that was passing by. With this as the center, there were countless cries of horror within about a few kilometers. A chain came to Black Water and slowly climbed up, like a spirit snake in a pot controlled by a flute. "I made this," Black Water murmured, lowering her head. The sound made by the slowly moving chains was like a voice of blame. Black Water opened her mouth. I won't do it again, I'm sorry." After that, the chains retreated little by little as if returning to the cave. Finally, only one chain was left, and it directly returned to the sky and disappeared in the night sky. On the other side, Wang Hu just stared at his palm blankly, frowning. A moment later, Black Water looked at Wang Hu warily. She gritted her teeth and said, "Let's leave it at that. If you fight with me again, those chains will probably appear again. They seem to exist to protect this city." Wang Hu didn't say anything and just nodded silently. Although he didn't know the origin of the chains, he felt that it couldn't be fake. The fear that the chains brought to him was several times greater than when he faced Long Shirua. The last time he faced Long Shirua, he was forced to give up resisting. This time, he didn't even have the heart to resist. He couldn't even summon up the slightest desire to fight. "You can go." Wang Hu looked at Black Water and said slowly, "Go back and train hard. You are very strong." With that, he jumped down from the remaining half of the building. Black Water opened her mouth but didn't say anything in the end. She just frowned. At this moment, a small black shadow suddenly rushed to her side. Pighead. Her frowning eyebrows slowly relaxed. She showed a gentle smile and hugged Pighead in her arms. She softly comforted him. "It's okay." The little piglet raised its head and looked around. It said timidly, "Sister, are we going to leave again?" Black Water looked at the destruction of the few kilometers. Even though some people were injured, unexpectedly, there were no deaths caused by the earthquake. Perhaps it was because of the chains. "We, probably, are not liked by this city," she sighed faintly. She just didn't know where to go after leaving here. At this time, fire trucks and police cars were rushing through the streets of the city to rescue the victims. The building, which was the source of the earthquake, was dead silent at this time. Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao successfully joined Bu Gao and rushed to find the injured people before half of the building collapsed. They also used a lot of powerful new talismans. They did not hesitate to use a lot of other props to support a defensive enchantment, which barely prevented everyone from being buried alive. "It seems to have stopped?" Hearing the sound, Bu Gao said in fear, "Outside?" "I'll go out and take a look," Wei Zidao said at this time, and then he turned over a wooden board and climbed up by feeling the way. Lu Mingho frowned and looked at the injured people gathered here. "Why are there children here?" A group of researchers, some were injured, some were lucky that they were not injured. They were huddled in a corner with a few children. They looked in horror but didn't dare to speak. Bu Gao pulled Lu Mingho aside. "Senior, I found some information. Do you want to take a look?" Lu Mingho reached out to take it and looked at the documents that Bu Gao picked up. At first, he just looked at them roughly. But as he looked, his speed slowed down, and his expression gradually became dignified. Finally, Lu Mingho snorted. "Superpower research, live experiments? Humph! How dare the Zhong family?" "Senior, this matter, how do you think we should deal with it?" Bu Gao asked carefully. It seemed that this time it was not to take credit, but to encounter something bad. "This matter, you can't deal with it, neither can I." Lu Mingho shook his head and said irritably, "Last time, when I reported Zhong Luoqin's contact with a superhuman, the higher-ups didn't react at all. This time it's already like this. If the higher-ups still don't do anything, I'll quit." "Then what about the people here? Bring them all back to do something." Lu Mingho thought and said, "We can't let these researchers and capable children enter society. We'll monitor them for now." After a while, Wei Zidao came back and said that the battle outside had stopped. He didn't find the big demon, but he met Wang Hu. But Wang Hu was in a dummy mode and didn't know anything. If it was just at the beginning, Wei Zidao planned to interrogate him properly. But after seeing Wang Hu's explosive combat power, he had to be careful. Who knew when Wang Hu would go crazy again? But it was strange that such a terrifying Wang Hu was casually beaten and scolded by Bu Gao. The two of them really didn't understand. "Let's take them away first." Lu Mingho sighed. "Go back and count how many fragments we have. I don't know how many people saw the demon cloud. I'm afraid it's not enough. Zidao, after sending them to the office, you go back to the branch tonight and explain the situation and ask for reinforcements. Or else I'll quit." "Save my child. Save my child, is anyone there? Someone fainted here. Do me a favor, move this pillar away. My boyfriend is being squashed, please do me a favor, please do me a favor. Ambulance! Ambulance!" It was a mess. The sound turned into a morning song and came little by little. Only half of the Zhong family's building was left. Luoqiu looked at all this silently, still wearing the pajamas. Behind him, the servant girl held a set of clothes in her hand, but the master didn't change. "Master," Luoqiu slowly opened his eyes and said faintly, "I'm thinking about how to better fulfill the contract with it in the future." "Master, what do you plan to do?" Yu Yi came forward. Luoqiu said, "Do you have any good ideas?" "Master has already thought about it." Yu Yi said softly, "Just follow Master's idea." Luoqiu muttered, "If I only take action every time a disaster appears, I always feel slack, although it doesn't violate the content of the contract. However, it might be better to be on the safe side. Then let's make this place a vacuum zone." "Master, are you planning to ban all activities of extraordinary power in this city?" Luoqiu shook his head. "Keep it to the minimum. After all, there are so many monsters living here. If they can't use any power, probably tomorrow morning, many monsters will reveal their original forms. As long as it doesn't escalate to the level tonight, it won't cause much harm to the city. Naturally, there will be people who are responsible to deal with it. It will exceed the expenditure," Miss Servant Girl reminded him softly. Luoqiu smiled. A breeze blew and he said softly, "I promised." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand towards the sky, opened his palm and slowly pressed it down. The instant his palm was level with the horizon, with him as the center, it covered the entire city, and even the suburbs. The area that was once covered by the underground spirit vein was instantly in a state of vacuum. "Okay." Boss Luo clapped his hands. "Anyway, I can't sleep. Shall we go down and help? Just do your best like an ordinary person." "Okay." Miss Servant Girl smiled, and then waved the clothes in her hand. "Master, don't you want to change your clothes first?" "I'm sorry." This smile was a little bit strict. In the room, Rico opened the window and looked into the distance. The moment the monster cloud appeared, she naturally woke up from her sleep. She didn't know what was wrong with those two big monsters. They actually started a war in the city. Didn't they know that a Shinryu lived here? Rico didn't notice the presence of Shinryu in the end. Instead, the two powerful and horrible monster powers suddenly disappeared without a trace. It was a bit anticlimactic. Although she didn't take the initiative to contact the Transcendence of Kelowna, she should at least know what happened. If there was no other way, she should be prepared to run away at any time. Thinking of this, Rico raised her small hand and called softly, "Snow Fairy, help me to see what happened over there." A little bit of ice and snow began to condense in her palm, and then turned into a small ball, but when the Snow Fairy was about to take shape, it suddenly melted. Rico couldn't help but be startled. She secretly thought that she didn't forget the spell, and she was very satisfied tonight. Why didn't it work? She tried to summon the Snow Fairy again, but failed. Failed. What's going on? Lizzie trembled in horror. She finally realized that her demonic power was still there, but she couldn't use it. Sleep. It must be an illusion. I'll be fine after I wake up. Without saying anything, Rico directly hid in the quilt, and even covered her head with the quilt. No matter what, the feeling of security that this family gave her was still there. Otherwise, she would really be scared to run away. At this time, Xuefeng ran hard to the wall. At the moment when he was about to hit the wall, he jumped up resolutely and stepped on the wall. He planned to run along the wall all the way. However, he only took a few steps before his body fell back to the ground. Not only him, Lang Yong and Lang Wu beside him were also making the same attempt. Over and over again, the three demon wolves naturally fell to the ground again and again. What happened? My power? Wolf Lord, ours is also. At this time, Mo Xiaofei frowned and came over. No need to try. I can't fly either. Moreover, this is all I can do. With that said, Mo Xiaofei waved his hand, and a stone on the ground floated up staggeringly. Mo Xiaofei then shouted, and the stone shot out. The stone made a parabola about 2 meters away, and then fell to the ground. What happened? Xuefeng looked at Zixing puzzledly. In his impression, Zixing was the kind of person who knew a lot. Since returning from Mount Tai, she had never smiled. She always stayed by his side coldly and often asked him the same question. When are you going to leave for the plateau? Zixing shook her head. She had actually tried several times, but naturally it was to no avail. The surrounding aura seems to be frozen. There is no problem with the monster power, but it seems to be isolated. It should be said that our bodies are isolated from the surrounding space, and the monster power can't be transmitted out at all. Lord Mo's mental power should be the same. Mo Xiaofei frowned and thought for a while. Is this like the so-called anti-magic space in the game? Anti-magic? Zixing was stunned, then nodded. It probably means the same thing. Just now, Mo Xiaofei looked at the night sky thoughtfully. This direction was the direction where he suddenly felt the appearance of the two terrifying forces. He originally planned to go and take a look, but just as he approached, he found that there were many collapsed places around. As a last resort, he turned to save people. Just as he was saving people, his ability suddenly disappeared. Windchaser soon found him, along with the other members of the Windchaser youth group. But everyone encountered the same situation. They couldn't use their ability. Is it related to the two terrifying monster powers before? Zixing was still thinking with her head down. Unfortunately, Lord Long is out, otherwise, he should know what happened. Mo Xiaofei suddenly said at this time, maybe it's a good thing. Brother? Xuefeng was stunned. Mo Xiaofei said seriously, it's the same for everyone if we can't use our ability. In this way, there won't be a terrible disaster like just now, right? This is naturally a good thing for both the people living here and the city itself. With that said, Mo Xiaofei touched Xuefeng's head and said with a smile, Okay, let's not talk about it. Let's not talk about the ability first. Maybe it's just a temporary problem. Let's save people first. Stormchaser, the whole team has won. Yes. Save people. Seeing Mo Xiaofei leading Zhuefeng and a few other little demons to join the rescue work on this street without any worry, Zixing couldn't help but frown. Lord Wolf, it's not necessarily a good thing to be so close to humans. Young Master Wei? Lang Yong asked in a low voice. Zixing sighed and shook her head. You go and help Lord Wolf. There's no reason for the servant to stand and watch when the master is working. Aren't you standing and watching? After several people worked together to move a lamppost away, they sent a passer-by who was crushed to the side. Mo Xiaofei reached out and wiped the sweat on his forehead at this time. Although he couldn't use his ability, his physical strength was much better than ordinary people because of the transformation of Shinryu's blood essence. Okay, the ambulance should be here soon. Let's go to other places to help. He looked at Zhuefeng and said, What's wrong? Zhuefeng lowered his head at this time, seeming to have some thoughts. He looked up and frowned. Big brother, are you really okay without your ability? What's wrong with me? Mo Xiaofei asked curiously. Zhuefeng said, But without your ability you can't do many things. You can't fly in the future. Do you really not care? Well, it would be a lie to say that I don't care. Mo Xiaofei heaved a sigh of relief and then smiled. But I can't fly. Yen P.S. 127th Genius remembers this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 1273. Humans had their own world, demons had their own world, and ghosts had their own world. It was supposed to be like this. But in this world, humans, demons, and ghosts coexisted. What humans didn't know was that there were mythical creatures around them, because they hid well and carefully followed certain rules. The sudden power restriction had no effect on humans. But the monsters who lived and worked in the city were so scared that they sat on the ground. Most of the monsters chose to work at night. Because there were relatively fewer humans working at night, the possibility of being exposed was lower. On the other hand, it helped them to absorb the essence of the moonlight at night. More than an hour ago, the collision of the two huge demonic auras made the monsters who worked at night in the city tremble. They were so scared that they didn't even dare to leave the place. Until later, they found that they had lost any means to use their powers. The only thing they could be thankful for was that this restriction didn't break the human-like state they maintained at this time. But losing the means to use their powers still made them very frightened. In just a short time, many human-like creatures gathered in front of the pet hospital. Of course, they were at the back door of the hospital, gathering herbs. The 2 words posted on the back door made the monsters who came spontaneously feel that things were strange. Although the owner of this place, Lord Long, did go out to gather herbs from time to time, they didn't think much of it on normal days. But tonight's strange situation happened. Let's go. This strange incident seems to be only in this city. A senior toad monster pushed up his glasses. I just talked to a cousin in another province. They seem to be fine. Well, my wife in the countryside is fine too. Fortunately, she is pregnant with her second child. I sent her to the countryside to prevent miscarriage. Otherwise, I don't know if it will affect the fetus. My soul doesn't seem to be affected either. Other than demons, there were naturally some wandering ghosts. Most of the ghosts would not survive the first 7 days of their death before they would be worn down by the strong yang qi. Only in places with strong yin qi or those with great resentment before they died would they become malicious ghosts after death. They would survive the so-called first 7 days and then continue to wander the world. However, I feel as if I'm stuck in a swamp. I can't even walk through a wall. The one who spoke was a malicious ghost hiding in a famous haunted house in the city. Although it called itself this king, it was just an old ghost who had lived for decades. Fengdu Ghost City didn't even take it in. Old Zhang's toad. You are from the Longevity clan and have a lot of knowledge. Do you have any clues? I'm not sure. You youngsters don't think that old people know everything. Of course. The monsters and ghosts began to disperse bit by bit. Although they were still worried, they had learned from various sources that everything would return to normal if they could not leave the city. Therefore, they were not really worried to death. In the worst-case scenario, they could just leave this city. They stayed here only because Shinryu was here. Compared to other cities, they had more freedom here. But at the same time, they were under Shinryu's watch, so naturally, no one dared to do anything bad. Therefore, many of the monsters that lived here were canine monsters or those with weaker bodies, commonly known as Taiping dogs. Those who were ferocious in nature would not choose to stay in this place. If we can't use our abilities, doesn't it mean that no matter if we are humans, demons, or ghosts, we can only live a normal life? This idea suddenly appeared in the minds of many ghosts. Speaking of which, it was not a bad thing. First of all, they would not reveal their true forms. Even if they could not use their demonic powers, their bodies were still quite strong. Those who were originally engaged in high-intensity work would not be affected. It's so strange that we can still cultivate in this situation. What does this mean? Their demonic powers could still be slowly increased by absorbing the essence of the moonlight. Even the spiritual energy in the world was as usual. Moreover, because of the explosion of spiritual energy in Mount Tai, the intensity of spiritual energy had been increasing these days. They really couldn't figure it out. But there was one thing that some of the wise ones among the ghosts thought of. This place has become a safe zone. Old Zhang's Toad had studied economics in a human university. The house price is going to rise. Not long after, Toad from the Jiang family acted decisively. He didn't hesitate to use all of his family's assets to buy a piece of land in the suburbs of the city. Then, he built a huge hotel and named it the Peace Hotel. This was a story for later. Qing Yun walked back and forth anxiously. This was the basement of Qin Heir's villa. This Qin Heir should have some unorthodox and evil abilities. The layout of this basement was very gloomy and scary. There were even many evil-looking idols. As for Qin Heir, he was holding a wooden sword and wearing a weird yellow Taoist robe. Qing Yun felt that it was similar to what Uncle Ing wore in Zombie Taoist Priest. If Qin Heir was not only wearing a pair of large underpants, he would feel more at ease. Seeing Qin Heir mumbling in the altar, Qing Yun did not dare to disturb him. At the same time, he looked at Zhong Luochen who was lying in the altar. Zhong Luochen's clothes had been stripped off, leaving only a pair of underpants. The blood stains of the bloody hole in his chest had been wiped clean. But because of this wound made Qing Yun even more afraid. Who could survive such a big hole in the chest? Zhong Luochen's body was covered with strange words written by Qin Heir with cinnabar. He looked extremely weird, especially, there seemed to be a chilly wind blowing in this place. This was obviously an underground secret room with no windows. Where did the wind come from? Heaven Spirit Spirit, Earth Spirit Spirit, the second son of the Zhong family, named Luochen, was born in the Wu Qin year, Jiazi month, Xianu day, high hour. Return quickly. Qin Heir spat out a mouthful of blood which splashed on the wooden sword. Then, he pointed the wooden sword at Zhong Luochen's forehead. Qing Yun could not see what was going on, but he saw Qin Heir yell again. Then, he flicked the wooden sword and took out a small cloth bag from the altar. The cloth bag seemed to be injected with something. In the blink of an eye, it began to swell out of thin air. Qin Heir quickly put away the wooden sword in his hand, then grabbed the cloth bag and tied it up with a red rope. After that, Qin Heir looked weak and sweaty. He could not stand firmly and could only slide down slowly by the altar. He gasped, "It's done. I've summoned him back." Young master is inside? Qing Yun swallowed his saliva and stared at the cloth bag in Qin Heir's hand. Qin Heir called it a Qiankuan bag. "Don't you trust me?" Qin Heir snorted. "Master Qin, I didn't mean that." Qing-yun hurriedly said, But I can't see him, right? Chen-er was annoyed and waved to Qing-yun. Come closer, I'll open the yin-yang eye for you. Mortals can't see ghosts. Yin-yang eye? This. Don't worry, it's only temporary. You're not born with yin-yang eye. Chen-er said indifferently, I'm not interested in opening it for you every time. Your young master has just been summoned back and now he's muddle-headed. He needs to be nourished with yin qi every day. After a few days, he'll regain his consciousness. But anyway, he's already a little ghost. It's better to have a ghost than not. Qing-yun shivered. Chen-er glanced at Qing-yun's absent-minded appearance and suddenly said, That's right, it's better to have a ghost than not. Although he can't come back to life, it's not impossible to let him appear in front of people in the future. Is there really a way? Qing-yun hurriedly asked, Master, don't lie to me. He can receive the incense of thousands of families and cultivate a golden body as a ghost. Chen-er rubbed his forehead and said seriously, I heard from my master that ghosts can indeed become a kind of strange ghost immortal with this method. But it's difficult to receive the incense of thousands of families. It's not just about burning incense, but also the devout worship of believers and the power of will of all living beings. And it takes a long time. And when the golden body is cultivated, it'll attract a heavenly tribulation. If he can't pass it, his soul will be scattered and he'll be doomed eternally. Even the Almighty Immortal can't save him. It's better to have a way than not. Qing-yun took a deep breath. Master Chen, open the yin-yang eye for me and let me see young master. Chen-er didn't say much. He took some willow leaves and burned them into talisman water. Then he stuck the willow leaves on Qing-yun's eyelid. Of course, it was useless for ordinary people to do this. It still required a little bit of Dharma power. Chen-er only learned a little from Wang Qifa, but he was very diligent in cultivating Dharma power. It was just that he didn't have the aptitude to do so. His magic power had always been in a negligible state. At most, it was at the level of opening the yin-yang eye. However, in the past month, his negligible magic power had made a breakthrough and actually allowed him to cultivate a little bit of magic power. Otherwise, he was afraid that he wouldn't have been able to summon spirit. Well, you can try to talk to your young master. Chen-er finished wiping his eyelids. I'm tired. I'll take a shower and have a rest. Wait, master, I didn't see anything? Chen-er was stunned. He frowned and walked back. He wiped Qing-yun's eyes with the willow leaves again and murmured, It's done this time. I can't see anything. Chen-er didn't believe it and continued wiping. What about this time? I can't see anything. What about this time? Can you see anything? No, F***ck. Try again, come on. Look again. Do you feel anything? I feel it. Master, my eyes hurt, you're wiping them. I understand now, you're a fraud. Wait, where's my Dharma power? Chen-er lowered his head and thought for a while. Then he said slowly, I must have used up all my Dharma power. Let me recover for a few days. I really need to summon back your young master. If you don't believe me, you can hold this Qianquan bag at night and think about your young master. He should come to you in your dreams. As he said, he threw the Qianquan bag to Qing-yun. Qing-yun had to take it with suspicion. Only half of the building was left. On the ground, large pieces of concrete were piled up. This was the scene of an earthquake. In the dark basement of the building, the original research institute was completely destroyed. Everywhere was blocked. Even the emergency lights were no longer shining. It was a completely dark space. At this moment, a large black cocoon slowly emerged from the bottom. Before the battle between Wang Hu and Blackwater, he felt a great danger approaching. Therefore, he didn't care about the life and death of the people in the research institute and directly dived into the ground to complete the transformation of his body. The process of changing the body was unexpectedly smooth. The degree of smoothness was beyond 24's imagination. This bald young man's body was simply a perfect container specially made for the transfer of consciousness. He easily destroyed the little bit of consciousness left by the bald young man and officially entered the body. What made 24 pleasantly surprised was that the body seemed to contain even more potential compared to when he was investigating it. If it was said that in the original subworld, he was at the peak of the Master Mage domain, then this body had the potential to be at the peak of the Master Warrior domain. Could it be that I have to walk the path of dual cultivation of magic and martial arts? He slowly opened his eyes, but at this moment, the large black cocoon suddenly dispersed. Mr. 24 was stunned, then he blinked his eyes and quickly came back to his senses. The joy of changing a good body instantly disappeared without a trace. Because his body was stuck in the cement and couldn't get out, 24 desperately found that although this body was very strong, it was obviously not strong enough to help him get out of the cement. What was even more desperate was that he couldn't use his strength. Finally, after trying for dozens of minutes, this immortal conjurer from the subworld said the first sentence after having a new body. Help! At 1:49 a.m. Today, a local earthquake occurred in the XX section of the city. In the morning, Nanny Wren held a glass of water in one hand and a toothbrush in the other, watching the morning news without blinking. She hurriedly walked out of the bathroom after hearing the news. Damn, was there an earthquake last night? When she woke up, Nanny Wren didn't feel anything. Morning, Sister Wren. She saw Lizzie walking out of the room weakly, holding a pillow in her hand, and then there were deep dark circles under her eyes. What's wrong with you? Didn't you sleep last night? Last night. Lizzie laughed twice. She couldn't say that she covered her head last night. The more she wanted to sleep, the more she couldn't sleep. I'm hungry, I need to replenish my energy, otherwise I will die. Only delicious food can save my scared soul. Well, where's breakfast? Oh, there's no breakfast today. Luocha went out early. There are biscuits in the cabinet, you can eat whatever you want. Too much. You don't even have a shop that sells bread downstairs. Lizzie tried hard, and the pillow fell to the ground. I don't live here anymore. Nanny Wren tore open the packaging of the wafer cake and threw it. Lizzie jumped and caught it with her mouth. Yoshi, Yoshi, good girl. Chapter 1274. 20 neatly dressed young men stood in 5 rows at this time. They raised their heads and puffed out their chests. Their eyes were focused. In front of them, Lu Mingho's mood was a little better. Finally, the branch was willing to send some people to help. Wei Zidao rushed to the branch overnight. Not only did he bring back the support, but he also brought back a large number of fragments. But what made Lu Mingho feel strange was that this morning, except for the overwhelming discussion about the earthquake disaster on the internet, there was nothing about the monster cloud. Obviously, there was no space for the agency to cover it up. But this matter was really not mentioned by anyone. Lu Mingho didn't know whether it was good or bad. He shook his head secretly. Brother Hao, there is a very strange thing. All our equipment is malfunctioning. What happened? I don't know. It was fine at first, but when we came back, it suddenly malfunctioned. Wei Zidao frowned. He had just arrived. The electronic equipment used normally is fine, but all the Taoist equipment can't be used. In addition, the Taoist technique can't be used, but the magical power is still there. Lu Mingho was shocked. He and Bu Bugao were busy dealing with the guys brought back from the research room. They didn't pay attention to this at night. His magical power was still there, but he didn't use any Taoist technique. It seemed that if he didn't use it once, he wouldn't find out the strangeness. Lu Mingho tried it subconsciously. He just used a simple little Taoist. The magical power was output normally, but it didn't bring any effect. He was really shocked. Wei Zidao quickly said, "It seems that it's just this city." I called back and asked, "Everything is normal in the branch. Except for this city, the surrounding area is also normal." The vacuum zone of the supernatural? Lu Mingho suddenly thought of such a word. The vacuum zone of transcendence was a topic that the agency had been researching for a long time, but it was just a hypothetical existence. It was said that the great array buried under the capital had the ability to release all its power in an instant, and then create a temporary vacuum zone of power within the capital. Of course, this was just hearsay, and no one had ever tried it before. What did the branch say? Wei Zidao said, "Soon there will be a commissioner to investigate the situation. I will bring people back to support you first." In addition, regarding the children and researchers in the research lab, the branch wanted to bring them back first. This group of people will be divided into 2 groups later, and will be responsible for escorting them to the branch. That's the only way. Lu Mingho nodded. What Wei Zidao brought back was only this. There was no more explanation, especially regarding the Zhong family. Although the time was very short, there was no news at all. Is he still planning to adopt an ambiguous attitude towards these aristocratic families? Or is there something else going on in the dark that I don't have enough authority to know about? Another thing was that the person in charge of the superpower research lab, Zhong Luochen, had gone missing. Brother Hao, what do we need to do now? Lu Mingho thought for a while. Since the vacuum zone is only limited here, we shouldn't panic too much. What we need to do now is to investigate whether no one saw the appearance of the demonic cloud last night, or if they saw it but didn't dare to say it. This is a lot of work. Even if we have support, it's not like we don't have enough people. Let's do as much as we can. Rescue work? Isn't there still the local government? Lu Mingho shook his head and said, "We only have a dozen people. We can't help much even if we want to. It's better to investigate the background of this matter. Right, later, you go and apply for the Zhong family's building. Don't let anyone touch it and don't clean it. The things inside can't be known to ordinary people. I'm afraid that when the rescue team cleans it, they will dig out the things inside." "I got it." Wei Zidao nodded. "In short, leave the building to dry first, and then wait for our people to arrive." With that, Wei Zidao pulled Lu Mingho to the side and whispered, "Brother Hao, where's Wang Hu?" Lu Mingho also whispered, "He's with Bu Bugao, looking after the people and children in the research institute." Wei Zidao said, "Wang Hu's strength is too strong. You saw it last night. But his details, I feel that it's different from the information." Lu Mingho said, "When you went back to the branch, did you mention Wang Hu?" Wei Zidao shook his head. "Didn't you tell me not to talk about Wang Hu first? So after I went back, I didn't say anything. I just said that there were 2 mysterious big demons fighting in the city." Lu Mingho lit a cigarette and blew on it, then said slowly, "The administration is very strict with the household registration of the demons, and the people who are going to work in the administration soon. Although they only belong to the logistics team, they can't be so careless. You saw Wang Hu's strength. Is such a strong demon really just a demon less than 100 years old?" "Brother Hao, what do you mean?" "I suspect that someone in our department forged Wang Hu's information, or modified Wang Hu's information. He may have already been on the list of big demons. But why would they do that?" "I'm not sure." Lu Mingho could only shake his head helplessly. "However, if it really becomes a transcendent vacuum zone, there's no need to worry about Wang Hu suddenly losing control. I think we have to keep him in this vacuum zone even more." Capital City, Administration Headquarters. Special Operations Division, Chief's Office. In front of a simple desk, Yan Xiaoxi looked down at several documents. These documents were sent back urgently. He was not the only one who had a copy. A few people in the administration headquarters who held higher positions than him had probably received a copy as well. Human experiments, the Zhong family. Yan Xiaoxi frowned and muttered, "First, the Zhao family was restless, then the Zhong family. These 4 families are really getting more and more active. But compared to these things..." That was the content of another document. Obviously, Yan Xiaoxi was more concerned about the content of this document. It's actually a transcendent vacuum zone. Does it really exist? Yan Xiaoxi was deep in thought. Is it man-made or formed naturally? Suddenly, there was a knock on the office door, and a staff member walked in respectfully. Chief, the deputy director would like to invite you over for an urgent meeting. Got it. Yan Xiaoxi nodded and closed the document on the table. Then, he clipped it to his waist, turned off the lights, and went out. They put on uniforms with the names of certain trade unions and shuttled through the streets of the earthquake-stricken areas to help with the transportation of supplies. Some of them were also giving food, clothes, and drinking water to the victims. Most of them were volunteers from various organizations. Of course, some of them were the main forces of the government. In a black MPV in a corner of the disaster area, Zhang Qingrui was discussing something with the elders in her family. This time, old Madame Zhang was also the one who led the rescue effort. As one of the leaders of the trade unions in the south, the wealthy were very kind and generous under old Madame Zhang's leadership. Their wives also took the lead and gave up on the poker game. Zhang Qingrui looked through the car window and stared at the madams who were busy working outside. She was neither happy nor displeased. Zhong Luochen has gone missing? Yes, we couldn't contact him after the accident. Zhong Luochen's property building is in the center of the disaster area, and half of it has already cracked. This morning, I contacted the entertainment company, but could only find a few managers. They didn't know where Zhong Luochen was, and so did Manager Cheng. Was he still in the building when the accident happened? Zhang Qingrui said in surprise. If so, Zhang Qingrui didn't continue to talk about what happened after that. Most of the time, the aristocratic families didn't talk about other aristocratic families. Most of the time, they were able to figure out the general trend of an aristocratic family. The Zhang family had some connections in this aspect. Firstly, old Madame Zhang and old Master Zhong were old friends. Last year, the two families even almost got married, but this thing was not done. Even so, the two families had cooperated before and invested in an entertainment company together, but Zhang Qingrui didn't care much about the business of this company. Basically, she let Shi Shiji handle it for her. Zhong Luochen might be in danger, otherwise, he wouldn't have disappeared and couldn't be contacted, but Zhang Qingrui didn't worry too much. After all, she didn't have a good impression of Zhong Luochen. Of course, she didn't hate him either. Generally speaking, they were acquaintances. Zhang Qingrui shook her head and said, the entertainment company should operate as usual. The Zhong family should get the news about Zhong Luochen soon. Let's see what old Master Zhong is going to say. Grandma is much better these days, and she's more energetic. Uncle Shi, please don't mention it. I'm afraid that she'll be tired if she worries too much. I know. Shi Shiji smiled. Miss, you're becoming more and more sensible. Whoever marries you in the future will be really lucky. He cared more about Zhang Qingrui finding someone she liked, rather than being the sacrifice of the family's marriage. Besides, Zhang Qingrui didn't need to rely on marriage with the wealth of the Zhang family. It was just that old Madame Zhang was a little obsessed last year. Fortunately, she had gotten over it. Zhang Qingrui felt it was still too early for her to talk about marriage, so she smiled and skipped it. Well, I'll go downstairs to help. Look, Song Ying has shown up. As the representative of the Song family, Song Ying naturally had to show up for the Chamber of Commerce's operation this time. Basically, Song Ying represented the Song family in donating $30 million and supplies for the disaster relief this time. It was said that she was also planning to participate in the reconstruction activities. However, there should be a government bidding activity at that time. The company needed a good reputation. Song Ying could do some activities at that time. Thinking of this, Zhang Qingrui put on the printed clothes and came to Song Ying's side. Sportswear and sneakers were different from those rich ladies who still wore skirts and high heels. Song Ying found Zhang Qingrui's appearance was much more pleasing to the eye. When did you dye your hair this color? She asked in surprise. Don't I look good? Song Ying shrugged. My hair has always been this color. I just dyed it black before. Zhang Qingrui asked curiously, why did you suddenly change it? Song Ying said casually, I said I wanted to be a good girl, but then I found I couldn't do it, so I changed it back. Do you believe me? Zhang Qingrui smiled, but didn't comment. She looked around and asked casually, how many materials did you send? What did you see? Seeing Zhang Qingrui's surprised look, Song Ying also looked over. In fact, there were all kinds of people in the crowd, including the victims, the volunteers, the police, and so on. They were all doing their own things. In the crowd, Song Ying and Zhang Qingrui both fixed their eyes on a young man in casual clothes who was also wearing the uniform of a street volunteer team. Luoqiu. Luoqiu was holding a broom, cleaning up the garbage on the street. In the end, Song Ying was the more proactive person. She subconsciously took a step forward and then stopped. At this time, a blonde girl came to Luoqiu, unscrewing a bottle of water for him, and then carefully wiping Luoqiu's cheeks and other places with a handkerchief. Miss Ying couldn't move at all, and her face was cloudy. I saw his girlfriend again. Behind her, Zhang Qingrui's voice was faintly discernible. Song Ying turned around and frowned. Do you know her? Zhang Qingrui shook her head. No, I just saw her once or twice. But she's really beautiful, and probably all men like her. Song Ying glanced over the crowd and muttered, Stupid head, you lied to me. You said she was as beautiful as a black tulip, but this is clearly golden, what? Zhang Qingrui looked at her in surprise. Miss Ying snorted and grabbed Miss Zhang's arm, pulling her. Come on, let's go to the spa. Is this for disaster relief? Whatever. I've taken out 30 million yuan from my private savings. Why should I be the general manager? Zhang Qingrui smiled bitterly, and simply let her drag her away. Although the rich had a lot of assets, there were not many people who could take out 30 million yuan without frowning. Most of them only had 100,000 yuan, 50,000 yuan, or hundreds of thousands of yuan, but they had already donated a good name back. The volunteer activities lasted for 2 days. When Luoqiu was doing volunteer work, he met many people he had met before, those who were still living happily. During the disaster relief, he saw many colors. It could be described as a large-scale state of kindness. He kind of liked it. Humans always learn to help each other when they are in trouble. On the evening of the second day, Luoqiu and Miss Maid came to the city's park. In the innermost part of the park, they planted a small seedling that had already sprouted. The seed was left by the customer with the spiritual vein, and it didn't germinate until now. After putting down the soil to give the seedling a stable place to grow, Luoqiu sat down. He sat on the left side and Yu Yi on the right side. Luoqiu smiled. You gave birth to the prosperity of this land, so now, let this land give you a stable home. They didn't leave until the afterglow of the sunset disappeared in the horizon and the moon rose. It was still wet at night, and the seedling was glistening with dew. Yen P.S. Sad Face 227. Chapter 1275. Xianyuan's Secret Land, the Royal Palace. In the princess's bedroom. On the soft couch, Su Zijuan only wore a cool black nightgown with strap. Her 2 straight legs were crossed. She was holding a luminous glass cup with spirit beast blood in one hand and resting her chin on the other. In front of her, Jessica, who was wearing a purple gold phoenix dress, was sitting upright. She had been sitting upright for 2 hours. All of a sudden, Jessica's shoulder lowered a little. At the same time, a rattan fell on her waist. Normally, she wouldn't feel any pain with her current body. But the fact was, it was very painful and burning. The one who held the rattan was Lord Chichikamaya of Xianyuan Palace. He said sternly, Listen, once there's a dispute in the imperial court, it will last for at least a few hours. As a princess, you can't ruin the royal etiquette. Of course, Jessica couldn't say anything. She couldn't disobey Su Zijuan's order. But the ancient etiquette she had been learning these days almost drove her crazy. She even had to learn oracle bone inscriptions. Su Zijuan's bite gave her the ability to live forever and didn't even need to rest. Obviously, this ability was used to its fullest. Jessica was only free for about half an hour of 24 hours a day. When she talked with Yi Yan about his motherland, Yi Yan said that his motherland was a country that liked to take exams and study. It was a tradition of thousands of years. It was simply the dregs of the tradition. That's enough. Su Zijuan suddenly sat up straight. What are you waiting for? When will you be done? Should I go out of the palace or not? Chichikamaya said lightly, Your Highness, Miss Jessica's sitting class will end in 2 hours. Then there's walking class and studying at night. Before he finished his words, Su Zijuan threw out the precious luminous glass cup, right at Master Turtle's face. The old turtle calmly reached out and took it. Princess, this old servant thinks it's better to be more appropriate. If outsiders find out that Miss Jessica is pretending to be you, the Xianyuan Palace will definitely be in a mess. How long will it take? Su Zijuan frowned. I think it'll take about 8 to 10 years. With Miss Jessica's IQ, it should be enough, Chichikamaya said seriously. Jessica rolled her eyes. Su Zijuan rolled her eyes. Chichikamaya said seriously, Let's continue the class. Su Zijuan suddenly waved her hand. Chichikamaya, come here, I have something to tell you, remember to keep it a secret. Seeing that Su Zijuan set up a bounded domain with her monster power, Gui Qianni was startled and then walked forward. Princess, what's the matter? You turn around first. Su Zijuan gestured with her hand. Chichikamaya had to obey her with confusion, but he had a bad feeling in an instant, and it came true in an instant. He felt that his head was hit by something, and then there was nothing. Jessica opened her eyes wide, looking at Su Zijuan, who was standing on the soft couch with the Xianyuan deity killing sword in her hand. She was speechless. Su Zijuan raised the deity killing sword in her hand and said seriously, My deity killing sword can kill fatuous emperors and slanderers. You're just knocking me out. You're giving me face. It's the emperor's sword that can kill fatuous emperors and slanderers. I'm not well educated, but I just passed the exam last night. Don't lie to me. Jessica rolled her eyes again. Su Zijuan took out a suitcase from under the soft couch and said without hesitation, You keep it, I'll go out. The Mirage Dragon Pearl is in Chichikamaya's hands. He knows what to do. Master, please take me with you. Jessica plucked up her courage and said. Su Zijuan said indifferently, You still have to stay here and replace me for a while. Remember, you have to drink at least 5 cups of spirit beast blood every day. And don't use your supernatural thunder power when your body can't bear it. Remember this if you don't want to die. Master, I'm going to take revenge. Jessica shook her head. Su Zijuan said, I'll take revenge for you, your husband. Bah. I'm leaving, stay here obediently. It's okay if you want to come out. When you pass the Golden Sword General's test, I'll consider coming back to pick you up. Jessica still wanted to chase after Su Zijuan. However, Su Zijuan turned her hand and slapped her with a strand of demon power. She was pressed onto the cushion and couldn't move at all. She could only watch Su Zijuan leave. Jessica heaved a sigh slowly. Chichikamaya rubbed his head and sat up slowly. Alas, this girl doesn't know how to take care of the elderly. Master Tortoise, aren't you? Jessica was stunned. Chichikamaya stood up slowly and said expressionlessly, Continue with the class. You have to sit here for another 2 hours. And you have to take out 4 hours every day to receive swordsmanship instruction. Try to pass the Iron Sword General's test within 2 months. I don't have 4 hours? Time is like breasts, you'll get them if you squeeze them. Do you know what the time in the Xianyuan Palace is like? Don't talk nonsense. Sit down. The rattan fell. Pa. In the Second Technical Research Institute of the administration's headquarters in the capital city. Outside the observation room through the specially strengthened glass, a group of researchers were carefully observing the things inside. At this moment, A forklift carried a huge iron cage into the room. There was a strong bull in the cage. "Director Pooh, everything's ready." The director of the Second Research Institute, Pooh Yuli, who was about 40 years old and had a kind face, stepped forward and said with a smile, "Then let's start." In the center of the observation room, a table slowly extended from the ground. There was also a sealed metal box on the table. Suddenly, the box slowly opened. Inside was an ugly and strange ball of flesh. Although the ball of flesh was alive, it seemed to be very slow. At the same time, the liquid nitrogen that was originally filled with the metal box also dispersed little by little. When the temperature rose to a certain degree, the small mass of flesh moved. It jumped down from the table and crawled towards the bull in the iron cage like a worm. The people outside carefully observed this scene. Finally, the mass of flesh crawled to the front of the bull. In the blink of an eye, the ball of meat stretched out like a huge net. While the bull was panicking, it directly wrapped around the bull and turned it into a huge ball of meat. At this time, it was like a huge stomach, constantly wriggling and then shrinking little by little. The strong bull was digested little by little until the mass of flesh shrank to a size that was only slightly bigger than before. After that, the mass of flesh seemed to be unsatisfied. It suddenly jumped up and directly hit the glass wall. It stuck to the glass wall, right in front of everyone's eyes. Quickly inject nitrogen." A large amount of cold air was injected into the room. After a while, the mass of flesh lost its stickiness like frozen chewing gum and fell from the glass wall. Unbelievable! This time, it actually swallowed a bull and completely digested it. Its cell composition is simply. We have done experiments on various small animals before. It can not only digest animals, but also extract animal characteristics. This is simply a versatile cell. Director Pooh, if we can understand its core principle, we can definitely come up with a result that can completely suppress Dr. Zhao's research results. Director Pooh? However, the kind Director Pooh kept looking at the stiff mass of flesh on the ground, as if he didn't hear the words of his subordinates. He just muttered to himself, "What a beautiful creature! I don't know if it can digest the monster race? There are a lot of monster race materials in the material room. Do you want to give it a try? How many more surprises can you give me?" Fanaticism. 9 o'clock in the evening. "Attention to passengers going to London, please bring your luggage." The broadcast sounded in the airport hall. In front of the security gate, Nanny Wren was holding a tissue and wiping her nose. "Don't eat outside, it's not good to mix with shady people. I heard that foreign students are very bad. If there are black boys looking for you, you must not go out with them at night. Also, if someone offers you cigarettes, remember to refuse, it may be marijuana and..." Chattering. Only Renziling and Lizzie sent them off. Lizzie was dragged by Nanny Wren. Luocio looked at the woman who usually didn't cry when she was in pain. Now, her tear ducts suddenly developed, so he let her chatter here. He looked at Lizzie and said, "Miss Lizzie, you drive later?" "Okay." Lizzie, who was looking at the restaurant sign in the airport hall, responded casually, "Well, I have to go through the security check." Renziling wiped her tears again, then clamped Luocio's arm and pulled him away from Yu Yi. Then she opened her windbreaker like an auntie who sold pirated AV discs on the street more than a decade ago, and took out something like a protective talisman. "What's this?" "I asked for it," Nanny Wren said mysteriously. "It was hard to ask for it from Avalokitesvara. Take it carefully." "I won't tell you even if I leave." Luocio shook his head. Renziling glared and patted on Luocio's forehead, saying angrily, "Just take it. Don't talk so much nonsense. Remember, you have the obligation to carry on the Luo family's ancestral line." She was probably the only one in the world who could talk to Boss Luo like this. Miss Maid looked at them, covering her mouth and smiling slightly. "I really have to go." Luocio avoided answering. Renziling had no choice but to put the talisman into Luacio's pocket and zipped up the bag. Remember to call home often. I will come back during the summer vacation. Renziling gave up on Luacio, then pulled Miss Maid aside and began to whisper something in her ear. Suddenly there was a sound of footsteps. In fact, a familiar voice could be heard from far away. It was long purple hair. Fortunately, I made it in time. How do you know my time? Luacio looked at Song Ying curiously. He remembered that he didn't tell her the specific time of departure. Song Ying was probably in a hurry, so he could see that she was holding her breath. Her assistant Zi Yun was behind her. Young Master Chiu, have you forgotten who owns the airline company you took? Zi Yun was secretly happy at this time. Miss and Miss Zhang can ask when you will leave. I want to leave simply. Luoqiu replied. They can come, but I can't. Song Ying snorted and glanced at the blonde woman behind Luoqiu. So what if you have a girlfriend? I'm your elder sister. That's not it. Luoqiu shook his head. I really don't want to bother you. But, thank you for coming to see me off, I will remember it. Who asked you to remember this? Miss Ying gritted her teeth at this time, then she opened her arms and hugged him. At the same time, she put her face on Luoqiu's left cheek, and her lips touched his cheek. Luoqiu was a little surprised. Song Ying said casually, Don't think too much, it's just a simple kiss. But Nanny Ren and the others who had noticed Miss Ying's arrival, especially Nanny Ren, at this time, covered her mouth with her small hand, instinctively showing a happy expression. I didn't think too much. Luoqiu smiled slightly, imitating Song Ying's appearance. He hugged her gently and touched her cheek. Take good care of yourself. Song Ying was stunned. She was so stunned that she couldn't react. She could only subconsciously cover her face. Seeing this, Nanny Ren came up wittily, muttering that she also wanted to kiss Luoqiu. She simply kissed him and then let him go with satisfaction. Later, Boss Luo looked at Lizzie casually. Lizzie quickly waved her hand and took a step back. I'll pass. Just remember to send me some delicious food. You can do this? Ziyun was suddenly amazed by this Master Chiu. She admired him so much. How did he do it? Miss Ying obviously came here to watch the show. Under Song Ying's silly and Nanny Ren's reluctant gaze, Luoqiu and Yu Yi walked into the security channel. Since we're leaving, don't be in a daze. Do you want to have a drink? Song Ying suddenly felt someone put a hand on her shoulder. She looked back and found that it was Ren Xiling. Nanny Ren squinted and smiled. You drink, Ying, can't be mine. This woman is so cheap. I'm so angry. Let's drink, who's afraid of who? In the night sky, a figure moved quickly in the clouds with a suitcase in her hand. It was Miss Su Zijuan who successfully left the palace without any accidents. It's strange. We're almost there, but I don't feel the aura of the old woman. Is she not here? Miss Su Zijuan muttered, but her speed didn't change at all. Suddenly, Miss Su Zijuan blinked and only felt that her body fell all the way down, down, down. Blink. Blink. Finally. Bang. Miss Su Zijuan kissed the earth intimately. Yen 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 P.S. Volume 11, End. Chapter 1276. On the sea, a super-luxurious ship was slowly sailing in the Pacific Ocean. This was a cruise ship that would soon sail to the island nation called Japan. On the uppermost floor of the cruise ship, the melodious sound of a piano drifted along with the sea breeze. Sometimes, seagulls flew by in groups. Young girls and beautiful ladies were attracted by the attractive middle-aged man playing the piano, and their hearts were captivated. The sound of the piano was so wonderful, as if it could touch the softest part of everyone's heart, gently teasing them. Only a woman in a black dress, who even under the umbrella of the tea table, still insisted on holding the black umbrella, which was particularly strange. Even so, the table next to this woman in a black dress was full of people, and almost all of them were men. She and the middle-aged gentleman playing the piano, one on the left and one on the right, caused this strange phenomenon at the same time, which was quite interesting. The sound of the piano stopped at some point. The young girls and beautiful ladies woke up from a dream, but they couldn't see the middle-aged gentleman full of beauty. They couldn't help but show a melancholy expression. As for the beautiful woman holding the black umbrella, she seemed to have disappeared at some point. Ah, the sea is so wonderful, so many beautiful ladies are sad for me, I am really a sinner. On the lower deck, at the stern part of the ship, the middle-aged gentleman looked at the endless sea and made such a sigh. Oh, I think the reason why those women are surrounding you is purely because you are wearing 10 diamond rings that can kill people, my dear Wolfgang. Miss Charlotte, you are always so humorous. The middle-aged gentleman. Wolfgang with a lot of gold smiled, revealing his neat white teeth. Charlotte frowned. You don't seem to be worried that we can't find Lucifer? Do you know how long we have been looking for him? Almost 3 months. Wolfgang calculated the time. It's really a wonderful journey. Charlotte sneered. You also know that it's 3 months. Do you know that in these 3 months, you've already climbed into the bed of 10 women, and almost seduced an underage girl to give herself to you? Why is it that compared to us, you're more like a demon? This is prejudice. Shaking his head, Wolfgang disagreed. Creativity requires inspiration, and love is the greatest source of inspiration. You should believe that we like each other from the bottom of our hearts. But 7 of them loved their husbands or boyfriends very much before you appeared. Charlotte maintained her cold smile. If Lucifer were here, I would definitely advise her to give you the position of hell. The pillar of lust should be very suitable for you. I think, he said seriously, even the banshees of hell have the right to pursue true love. If it wasn't for the fact that she knew she couldn't beat him, she would have torn him apart and thrown him into the water to feed the fish. Charlotte revealed a sad expression and sighed softly. Madam Charlotte, according to your guidance, we started from South America and went all the way to the east. It seems that there is no result. Wolfgang restrained himself. I think it would be better for you to do another divination. Wolfgang had heard about Charlotte's divination. Charlotte, who was known as the guiding light, had a very accurate success rate in divination in a certain aspect. It's the east. Charlotte was expressionless. How could it not be divined? Every day it would hide and secretly divine, but every time it would point to the west. Charlotte, who was more or less aware of her own divination abilities, couldn't tell if it was the east or west. However, even if it was the east, she could still reach the west if she kept going down the road, right? Anyway, as a devil, she didn't lack time. It was just that she felt a little lonely without Lucifer by her side. Wolfgang was obviously not a good companion. Shoo! He suddenly made a shushing gesture and then listened carefully. Charlotte frowned. Wolfgang stopped listening and said with an interesting expression, Beautiful Madam Charlotte, I seem to hear 2 very powerful forces colliding on the sea. 2 forces? Charlotte was surprised. Wolfgang said, It's almost the limit of the subworld. Charlotte looked at the direction that Wolfgang pointed and thought. On the sea, the sword chi broke the sea and drew a huge crack that was hundreds of meters long. After all, they were on the sea. No matter how hard they tried, they could only make the sea water a little murkier. 2 figures were tossing and turning between the wave. Sometimes the sword chi was rampant and sometimes huge waves were surging. Vixen, how many times have I told you that I don't know where your master is? You've chased me all the way from Kelowna to the sea, isn't that enough? You're a flirtatious vixen with a teacher fetish. The woman in white who was holding the green lotus sword song didn't pay any attention to her. She kept thrusting her long sword, and each time, the extremely sharp green sword chi shot out. Gong Fanqing gradually became angry. She didn't want to fight with Qinqiu to the death. It was really not worthwhile for both of them to be injured. But she couldn't stand this vixen's continuous improvement. How long had it been since she easily suppressed her opponent to a tie? It's true that you're a teacher fetish. You've really reincarnated and cultivated again and again. I've never seen anyone like you who has self-detonated the realms of so many lifetimes in order to improve the strength of this life before you've achieved the unity of Tao. Do you know that you can't reincarnate anymore? If you die in this life, you'll reach the end. Is it worth it for Tai Bai? It's useless to say more. Gong Fanqing was so depressed that she wanted to spit out blood. Although Qin Chuyu had self-detonated the cultivation of so many lifetimes to improve the strength of this life, she was only at the same level as her, so she wasn't afraid. But if the Green Lotus Sword song was included, speaking of which, after leaving Kelowna, she was already unable to defeat Qin Chuyu. Do you really think I'm easy to bully? Gong Fanqing was furious at this moment. You clearly know that it's useless to chase me, but you're still so obsessed. Are you really afraid that Tai Bai has died and you want to use me to overcome your inner demon? Today, I'll do closed-door training for 100 years to heal my wounds, and I'll teach you that I'm still your grandaunt. Humph. Gong Fanqing made a mudra with both hands, using her lifetime's unique skills, such as the Sea Emperor Mudra, Buzhou Mountain Mudra, Akalanatha Mudra, Burning Sky Mudra, and Reincarnation Mudra. Instantly, the 5 mudras combined into one, and the sea area surged with huge waves at the same time. Qin Chuyu was fearless. She held her sword high in the air, looking like she could break the blue sky with her sword. The two terrifying forces collided, and the sea level within several kilometers sunk by half a foot in an instant. Then, huge waves surged out from all directions. Oh, my God, it's so nice to not have to worry about the world's will. Looking at the huge waves surging towards them from afar, Wolfgang and Charlotte, who had chased them all the way from the cruise ship, sighed with emotion. I didn't expect there to be such a strong person in the mortal realm. Charlotte, who was holding an umbrella, frowned. She felt that this trip to the east was really inauspicious. Should they turn back? Look, what's that? After the waves passed, a figure could be seen floating on the surface of the foamy seawater, slowly drifting over. Wolfgang's sharp eyes saw that it was a woman. Without saying anything, he drifted down and scooped her up. Oh, what a beautiful Oriental lady! Wolfgang immediately exclaimed. Charlotte rolled her eyes but looked around. I found one here, then the other one is you? I didn't find you. What are you going to do? Seeing that Wolfgang didn't intend to let go, Charlotte couldn't help but ask. As a gentleman, of course, I have to lend a helping hand to a beautiful lady in trouble. Wolfgang smiled. This must be the beginning of a beautiful exotic love. Ah, my inspiration is starting to burst out again. Don't forget why we came out, don't complicate matters. Miss Charlotte, don't you think this powerful Oriental lady may know the news of His Highness Lucifer? Although she knew this was basically Wolfgang's excuse, Charlotte couldn't be sure. She could only keep silent and let this guy carry the woman back to the cruise ship. Under the sea, the body wrapped in white clothes slowly sank. She had lost consciousness, but even so, she didn't loosen her grip on the long sword. She didn't know where she was going to sink. Suddenly, a black shadow swam towards her. The black shadow circled around her for a short while before dragging her deeper into the sea. It took more than 8 hours from the Eastern 8 district to the zero-time zone before the plane slowly landed at the airport of the capital of Great Britain. The journey was quite comfortable. The reason for the comfort was that the club master and servant, who originally only ordered a relatively good business class, were informed after boarding that it had been upgraded to a first-class VIP cabin. This probably wasn't Song Ying's idea. If it was Miss Zhang who was kind to people without leaving a trace, it was probably Miss Zhang. Master, are you going to tour along the way? This was the first time Luochio came to this country. The weather in Fog City wasn't as gray as people said. Instead, it was very sunny, but it might be because they were lucky that they didn't encounter gray weather. Okay. Luochio smiled. After leaving Hua country, he naturally had more freedom. He felt that he could wander around freely. As for the enrollment, Luochio really didn't care. The so-called study abroad was just a reason to leave. Of course, the admission of that university was true, but the one who was admitted was Yu Yi, who just impersonated Boss Luo. As the university with the highest threshold in Great Britain, Luochio didn't think that he could pass the exam with his level. At that time, I think we need to find a hotel where we can stay temporarily. Luochio suggested, have you lived here before? The previous owner opened a shop here about 3 months ago, right? The servant girl recalled, but it was 200 years ago. I remember the sky here wasn't so clear at that time. At this time, dozens of nameplates suddenly appeared at the entrance of the inquiry station. The nameplates were held up high, and the words Luochio were written in big Chinese characters. It wasn't a matter of whether they could pay attention to it. They could definitely see it. Basically, it wasn't something important. Boss Luo, who didn't use the omniscient skill, was quite curious at this time. He walked side by side with the servant girl to one of the nameplates. He had yellow skin and black eyes, so he should be at least Asian. You must be Master Chiu. The Asian introduced himself first. Hello, I'm Peter Chen, the manager of the business department of the Song Dynasty Group's London branch. Song Dynasty. Luochio was stunned. At this time, he didn't need to use the omniscient skill to guess what had happened. Yes. Peter Chan took out a gold-stamped business card. Master Chiu, it's like this. After you left, Miss Singh has told us to treat you well. We have prepared the best room for you in the hotel. Please come with me. I don't need to look for a place to stay. Luochio looked at Yu Yi and smiled slightly. The servant girl said softly, Miss Ing is very considerate to you. Not only did she send you off, but she also arranged a place for you here. Boss Luo made a gesture of invitation. Ladies first. I'll carry the luggage. Peter Chan hurriedly walked up at this time. The car is ready, it's just outside. Luochio looked at those people who were still holding nameplates. These people? Peter Chan said. They are all from the company. Basically, some people from each department were transferred here. We were afraid that you didn't notice them, so we called more people. Those who didn't know would think that some big shot was coming. The surrounding tourists and the people who came to receive them looked at them curiously. Boss Luo's presence suddenly became so low that only the Song Dynasty employees could notice him. He looked at Peter Chan and said politely, Mr. Chen, please lead the way. Also, please thank these employees for me. It's our pleasure, Peter Chan hurriedly said. Song Dynasty Group mainly operated star-rated hotels. The car that came to pick them up this time was naturally the local hotel's best delivery car. Mr. Chen, are you Chinese? In the separated back seat, Luochio and Peter Chan started chatting. My father is Chinese, my mother is Indian. The time for chatting passed quietly. Before they knew it, they had arrived at Song Dynasty Hotel in Kensington, where the fog was growing inch by inch. Peter Chan personally sent Luochio and Peter Chan to the door of the presidential suite on the upper floor of the hotel. He was as respectful as a gatekeeper. This was the manager of the hotel's operations department. Master Chiu, this is the hotel's room with the best view. At night, you can have a panoramic view of the fog city. Luochio was quite satisfied. Miss Maid smiled and said, Mr. Chen, sorry to trouble you. I'll take care of the rest. Peter Chan hurriedly said politely. Then he suddenly said, Miss, we've also arranged your room. My room? Miss Maid was a little confused. Peter Chan glanced at Luochio and forced a smile. Yes, miss, your room is on the 4th floor. But don't worry, it's also a very good room. We'll give you the best service. This is the 17th floor. Miss Maid narrowed her eyes. It's really arranged, yen 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 ps. 3/27.